Chapter 524. The red afterimage tore through the seemingly calm lake under the feet of the MACROSSSDF-1, which was surging with undercurrents, and rushed into the sky amidst the splashes of water. It rushed towards the night sky that was already occupied by countless jams. That was the airspace where YF-21 and Ghost X9 were located. Kai. It's starting. State White Cat Zero's voice rang in Lei Mingkai's mind. The Ghost X9 that was integrated with it increased the processing of the propulsion engine. It took the lead to charge towards the black mass of the Jam army that was pressing towards them like an avalanche. Hum! Hum! As it rushed forward, the 5 laser cannons equipped by Ghost X9 once again displayed their power. One target after another was locked in front of the White Cat's eyes. In the next second, they were shot into pieces by the deadly laser cannons. Then, it locked on to the next target, and continued to attack in the same way. Although this attack pattern was very simple, with the support of Ghost X9's own terrifying mobility, it was able to rush back and forth in the Jam army without the slightest possibility of being hit by the Jam army. Of course, Ghost X9's arrogant way of doing things naturally attracted the attention of most of the Jams. Especially when the Jams on Ghost X9's attack route noticed Ghost X9's appearance, they immediately shrank the distance between them, shrank and shrank again, leaving no space for Ghost X9 to pass through. Under the shrinking Jam army, even Ghost X9, with its super-high mobility, had to face the reality that its path of movement was constantly narrowing. If Ghost X9 could still maintain some missiles before, the current situation would not be a problem. But here was the bad thing. Ghost X9, which had already poured out all its missiles, could only use the 5 laser cannons. Although the laser cannons were powerful enough to destroy Jam in one shot, the other party relied on their absolute advantage in numbers. After one was killed, another one would come up. They put on an expression that said, "You can do whatever you want, I have plenty of military strength. That's why I hate to be enemies with an absolute number of enemies." The White Cat looked around and sighed secretly. This was not because the White Cat felt discouraged when facing the encirclement of the Jam army that was constantly narrowing. Instead, it sighed with slight distress, because the possibility of the encirclement of the Jam army narrowing had long been predicted by Lei Mingkai and the White Cat. Even under such circumstances, White Cat Zero still fearlessly controlled the GHSOT X9 to charge into the enemy's formation in order to verify something. Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as the Jam army was about to complete the encirclement of Ghost X9, a series of missiles suddenly appeared from below, causing a violent explosion that was enough to blow a hole in the encirclement of Ghost X9. Boom! Among the huge fireballs that exploded with a loud bang, there were small explosions caused by the explosions that were constantly affected by the explosions. The fragments that filled the sky flew in all directions amidst the explosions. Among these fragments, a red shadow valiantly rushed out from the center of the fireballs and danced in the sky. If one was not careful, a scar would be left on one's body, and one might even be buried in the fragments of the sea of fire. It broke through the encirclement of the Jam army. Well done. The White Cat looked at the hole in the encirclement and could not help but praise. I didn't expect that State Zero would thank me. Little did he know that the voice that came after made the White Cat shut its mouth and remain silent. This was not because the White Cat was cold, but because it did not know how to face that person. While the White Cat was silent, the person who reached out to help finally appeared. It was a body that was exactly the same as the Ghost X9 that the White Cat was controlling. From the looks of it, they were basically the same type of body. The second X9. Not far away, while Lei Mingkai piloted the YF-21 to attract some of the Jam's attention, he also saw the GOTS X9 that only existed in the settings during the Sharon incident. It was different from the X9 that had fought with YF-19 and YF-21 and was destroyed by the unrestricted YF-21. Until the end of the Sharon incident, it stayed quietly at the bottom of the lake in Macross, silently watching as its twin brother was destroyed by the YF-21. It was only until the VF-1X2 incident that led to the disintegration of the old Unified and the rise of the new Unified that it made its debut as a boss machine. Of course, after the Sharon incident, no matter how the Earth Unified announced the ban on the development of learnable AI on the surface, but they continued to research related technology in the dark, they couldn't save the X9 that survived the Sharon incident from the war that led to the disintegration of the old Unified. Now, this X9 that should not have appeared at this moment appeared and extended a helping hand to the X9 piloted by the White Cat. Go. State 0. Ray Minkai and the White Cat's silence did not surprise the X9 that suddenly appeared. On the contrary, their reaction was within the expectations of the person controlling the X9. It really hasn't changed at all. Unknowingly, when a sigh sounded, two X9s attacked together and rushed to the location of the YF-21 at the fastest speed. At this moment, the YF-21 was relying on its own speed to contend with the Jam army that was coming from all directions. Even though the attack of the Gatling gun equipped by the YF-21 was still sharp, it could not hide the fact that it was gradually slipping into defeat under the massive Jam army. Ray Minkai was very clear about this point. However, he still maintained his calm and piloted the YF-21 to avoid the enemy's attacks again and again. Looking at the increasing number of enemies behind the YF-21, the two X9s immediately split up to the left and right. With the YF-21 as the center, they targeted the Jam army that was chasing behind the YF-21. As they circled up and down, they used their own laser cannons to launch a series of deadly attacks, scraping off layer after layer of steel wreckage from the Jam army behind the YF-21. Suddenly, under the joint attack of the two X9s, the Jam army that was chasing the YF-21 at the 6:00 direction suddenly lost 30% of their momentum. Even though the three airframes had already used up all the missiles and other weapons that could cause mass destruction, the two Ghost X9s were equipped with a total of 10 laser cannons. Under the deadly attacks of these laser cannons, whenever the Jam army wanted to speed up and chase after the YF-21, the two Ghost X9s would immediately join forces to destroy the most prominent part of the Jam army in an instant, maintaining a stable and controlled situation from beginning to end. However, looking at it from a long-term perspective, how long could this seemingly stable situation last? Sharon, is there a second airframe like that at the bottom of the lake here? The moment the second Ghost X9 appeared, he noticed it. It's her. Sharon raised her head. Her eyes alternated between hatred and confusion as she looked at the Ghost X9 that suddenly appeared. Only she knew what the appearance of the second Ghost X9 meant. Her? He was confused. No, nothing. For some reason, Sharon avoided the subject. This reaction surprised but she didn't care too much. For her, even if there were 10 more Ghost X9s, it wouldn't be too much of a problem. In the face of absolute numbers, even if it had the best performance, it would just be a free gift. It's time to end this. After watching for so long, he felt a little tired. In the night sky of Macross City, lightning once again appeared. This time, behind the lightning, more and more powerful jams directly rushed into this world. Not only did they surround Macross City, but they also began to spread towards Macross City. What the hell are you doing? You're hindering Yong. The appearance of the third wave of jams not only instantly drowned out the movement space of the YF-21 and the two Ghost X9s, but it also affected Sharon's movements. The YF-19, which was originally able to go back and forth under the anti-aircraft fire of the SDF-1, almost died under the anti-aircraft fire of the SDF-1 because of the sudden appearance of the third wave of jams. If Yong Daesun hadn't reacted in time and transformed into a human form, relying on the Needle Defense System's powerful defensive capabilities to block that attack, Yong Daesun would probably have been killed by now. Isn't that your dream? To give your loved ones a chance to realize their dreams. But that should be me doing it. Not you, Miss Ikacha. A trace of energy burst out of Sharon's mainframe without warning, leaving a dazzling black scar on the red carpet in the blink of an eye. Mice. He lowered her head and looked at the scar that had already extended to her feet, and could not help but be silent for a moment. Sharon, what the hell are you doing? We're allies. Mia frowned and scolded her. Allies? No. You're just using me. For some reason, Sharon, who was originally getting along well with Mice, and Mia, suddenly turned on them. Not only did she coldly look at the two of them, but she also had a strong tendency to attack in the next second. Wait, Sharon. We have no intention of being enemies with you. Mice. He raised her right hand on the spot, indicating that she had no ill intentions, and at the same time, took a few steps back with Mia, increasing the distance between them and Sharon. Don't get in my way. Sharon coldly looked at the two of them who retreated, then continued to pay attention to Yong Daesun's situation. Mice. Sharon's situation is starting to become unstable. Should we make a move now? Mia shifted her gaze, looking left and right. No. Wait a little longer. Now is not the time yet. Sharon's change caught Mice a little off guard, but overall it was still under control. TSK. Kai, what do we do now? White Cat State Zero let out an anxious voice. The constantly increasing number of enemies had already reduced Rei Minkai and the rest's space of movement by more than half. If this continued, what awaited Rei Minkai and the rest was to sullenly be crushed to death by the Jam army, and not be beaten to death. Charge! There was no hesitation. There was no doubt. Rei Minkai made a prompt decision. However, before YF-21 could make a move, Ghost X9, which was one step behind, took the lead and rushed towards the Jam army above them. That was the second Ghost X9, which was also the body controlled by that person. So impatient! White Cat State Zero muttered and followed. To break through the encirclement of the Jam army, the lack of firepower of any body would cause the breakthrough to fail. Buzz! Buzz! The laser beams were continuously shot by the two Ghost X9s in turn. Like a scalpel, they accurately blew up the jams that were blocking the path of the breakthrough. Their goal was not to destroy the enemy, but to open up a way to escape in the fastest time. YF-21, who was following behind the two Ghost X9s, moved at high speed. The JM, who was lucky enough to escape from the firepower of the two Ghost X9s, was sent to the underworld with the Gatling gun. Da-da-da-da! The Gatling gun was hissing. The fish that escaped the net in front of them let out a destructive roar. However, the number of Jam army was too great. Especially in the sky gate that was filled with lightning, the Jam army that was constantly pouring out to replenish them. The speed of the two Ghost X9s and YF-21's breakthrough slowed down again and again. It was almost at the lowest speed that they could not maintain their flying state. At this moment, whether it was YF-21, the front, back, left, or right of the two Ghost X9s, they were all surrounded by the Jam army that was getting denser and denser, almost completely isolating the light from the outside world. Go down! Above their heads, the passage that could have allowed YF-21 and X9 to escape had been sealed tightly. The only way to escape was to be below the Jam army. True to his word, the second Ghost, X9 did not respond, and directly responded with its actions. As the fuselage rolled, the second Ghost, X9 had already rushed down. It rushed down toward the seemingly dense blockade below, but it was weaker than the blockade of the Jam army above. Buzz! Buzz! The laser cannons tore through the air and swept across the Jam army, setting off waves of explosions. However, in the seemingly incomparably powerful explosion, the Jam army, which should have been heavily injured, still existed. Even though there were shocking wounds on their bodies, it did not hinder their blockade of YF-21 and the two Ghost X-9s. X-9's attack is ineffective. Such an unbelievable sentence sounded in the communication channel. A moment ago, X-9's laser cannon could still cause fatal damage to JM, but in the next moment it lost its power. Has it evolved? YF-21's attack was finally here. Under Ray Minkai's control, the bullets fired by YF-21's Gatling accurately hit the wounds caused by the X-9's laser cannon. This was the correct approach. Rather than attacking the other intact parts of Jam's body, it was better to directly attack the wounds left behind by the previous battle. Under the whistling bullets, the wounds that were hit were instantly swallowed by Jam's explosions. Seeing that Ray Minkai's approach was effective, the two X-9s immediately changed their attack tactic. Relying on their own powerful calculation ability, they used a division of labor and cooperated to kill all the enemies blocking their path. Ray Minkai didn't know how much time had passed. He only remembered that when he attacked the Jam army and tried to break out, he controlled the subconscious reaction of his body and body. Other than that, how many enemies had appeared in front of him? What did they look like? Ray Minkai couldn't remember anymore. He only remembered the light that broke through the darkness. When the lights of Macross City appeared in front of him again, YF-21 and the two Ghost X-9s successfully broke out. However, this was still not the end of this battle. Chapter 525. The song was still going on. The image of the goddess surrounded by golden light was still standing behind the SDF-1, looking down at the humans in the city. Even if the sky above the city was shrouded by the Jam army that covered the sky and the moon. Even if the attack team formed by YF-21 and the two Ghost X-9 continued to fly over the city, firing laser beams that blew up the enemies in front of them, leaving the wreckage scattered on the ground. They still couldn't wake up the humans who were killed by Sharon. Not to mention the people standing on the street, even the SDF-1 personnel involved in the battle were the same. Everyone standing on the bridge of the SDF-1 stared blankly at the light of the explosion outside, and Sharon's voice echoed in their ears. TSK. So troublesome. When YF-19 was about to reach the SDF-1 suddenly burst out with extremely dense anti-aircraft fire. Fortunately, Young Dyson's reaction was fast enough. Otherwise, YF-19 would have plunged into the bottom of the lake and died. These monsters. There are so many of them. Young Dyson took a deep breath and glanced at the jam that had sealed off the airspace around him, but didn't attack YF-19. Young Dyson didn't know why these jams didn't attack him, but from Ray Minkai's movements, Young Dyson knew that these monsters were targeting Ray Minkai. What should I do? Young Dyson gritted his teeth and planned the next move in his mind. Lieutenant, don't worry about me. Continue your own operation. Just then, Ray Minkai's voice sounded. Second Lieutenant, what are you talking about? Do you want to die? No. I can still hold on. Lieutenant, the faster you take care of Sharon, the faster the situation on my side can be resolved. Ray Minkai's words made Young Dyson pause, but he quickly understood. Okay. You hold on for me. Buzz buzz buzz. Before the two disconnected the communication, the Jam army separated YF-19 and YF-21, making them unable to see each other and unable to provide support. You don't want him to come over? A message came through. It was the voice in Ray Minkai's memory. No, he has his own matters to attend to. Ray Minkai replied. It's still the same. But what can you do about this situation? If this continues, we will only be exhausted to death. Yes. Before Ray Minkai could speak, the White Cat, State Zero, interrupted their conversation. As long as there's a chance, the long-toothed lion Bangza will be able to handle this situation. Bangza? Bang's armed forces are indeed powerful, but the number of enemies is. No, I can do it. State Zero has already grown. As he spoke, Lei Mingkai took a deep breath. Lei Mingkai finally understood what was going on from their cooperation earlier. It was just that he refused to admit it. He refused to admit that the person who was supposed to be dead had actually appeared in front of him and fought side by side with him again. Vivian, trust me. I also believe in State Zero. Lei Mingkai's voice was trembling uncontrollably. The last time he called this name was a long time ago. It was so far away that he had once forgotten it. Listening to Lei Mingkai's call, the white cat, State Zero, sighed secretly in its heart. Yes. Lei Mingkai refused to admit it, and the white cat, State Zero, was even more unwilling to admit it. Compared to Lei Mingkai, the white cat, State Zero, saw Vivian die in the sea of fire when the capital fell. It was just that the white cat, State Zero, hid that memory in its heart and did not say it out loud. Now you admit it's me, Kai. You clearly thought that I was Sharon before. Let's begin. Lei Mingkai heard Vivian's complaints, but he did not say anything. It was as if admitting that Vivian was still alive was already the limit of what Lei Mingkai could do at the moment. The temporarily formed attack formation raised its head and once again rushed into the formation of the Jam Army. In the blink of an eye, YF-21's Gatling gun and Ghost X-9's laser cannon became the sharp knives that tore apart the Jam Army. Looking from afar, an extremely dazzling explosion path tore open a wound in the Jam Army as YF-21 and Ghost X-9 advanced. In the violent explosion, YF-21 and Ghost X-9 broke through the explosion smoke and rushed out of the Jam Army with traces of fire. And in the residual smoke that YF-21 left behind, there was a trace of strangeness. There should have been 2 Ghost X-9s, but now there was only 1 Ghost X-9 following behind YF-21. Could it be that in the impact just now, a Ghost X-9 was destroyed? Roar. Suddenly, a wild beast-like roar resounded through the sky. In this roar that seemed to cross time and space, 2 dazzling lights erupted from the ground, in the city that was hypnotized by Sharon. Just like the sword that split heaven and earth in the legends, the Jam Army that covered the sky was torn in half. Those were 2 powerful electromagnetic cannons. Moreover, after the shells fired by these 2 electromagnetic cannons, there were hundreds of large and small missiles. They followed the path opened by the electromagnetic cannons all the way up and crashed into the formation of the Jam Army that was broken by the electromagnetic cannons. The roaring explosion, the dazzling brilliance, the continuous and seemingly endless missiles, and the electromagnetic cannons that would fire in unison every half a minute to disrupt the enemy's formation became the main character at this time. And the owner of these weapons was a huge steel beast standing on a mountain peak to the east of Macross City, Long Fong Lion Bonza. It turned out that under the cover of YF-21 and the second Ghost X-9, the White Cat Zero took advantage of the shock wave and smoke caused by the explosion and landed on the mountain peak without anyone noticing. It also used the rarely used Long Fong Lion Bonza form. What kind of monster is this? The Monster King of the Unified Army? That's not right. When did the Unified Army equip such a monster? Near the mountain peak where Long Fong Lion Bonza was located, Yang Nguyen was holding his computer in shock as he looked at the steel lion that set off a series of explosions in the air that devoured the enemy. Long Fong Lion Bonza. The red ghost drew an arc in the air and swept past the mountain peak where Long Fong Lion Bonza was located. Relying on the camera of Ghost X-9, Vermilion, who was controlling it, looked at the Long Fong Lion that used to fight side by side with her in surprise. Now, the changes of Long Fong Lion Zero were beyond Vermilion's memory. Not to mention other things, the seemingly endless ammunition was already an ability that the original Long Fong Lion Zero did not have. 1 wave, 2 waves, 3 waves, under the fierce attack of the electromagnetic cannons and missiles, a huge gap was opened in the Jam army that covered the sky and the moon, exposing the SDF-1 that was surrounded by the Jam army. Kai. Now. The steel lion roared, and the weapons on its back suddenly changed their target, locking all the targets on the Jam army that was trying to close the gap to prevent YF-21 from passing through. Boom! Boom! Every time the electromagnetic cannons fired, the ground under Long Fong Lion Bonza's feet was constantly shaking and cracking. Above the cracks that were like spider webs, there were even sand and dust that were blown away by the shock waves caused by the electromagnetic cannons. YF-21 rolled and changed direction, rushing towards the gap opened by Long Fong Lion Bonza. At the same time, Vermilion's ghost, X9, followed closely behind. It's coming! This change was seen by Miss E, but before Miss E could make a move, Sharon made a move. The song that lingered above Macross City suddenly changed, from a sacred song to a passionate song. Moreover, the second after the change in the song, a fighter formation formed by 5 VF-11 appeared on the west side of Macross City. The moment the fighter jet formation appeared, the Jam army that had surrounded the city of Macross opened up a path, allowing the fighter jet formation to pass through. They watched as the fighter jet formation pounced on YF-21. Boom! Boom! There was no communication. There was also no movement. The moment this VF-11 formation entered the maximum range of the missiles, they fired all the missiles they carried at YF-21. Kai. That's a human being controlled by Sharon. As soon as Vermilion saw the appearance of this VF-11 formation, she immediately understood what was going on. I know. Ray Minkai already knew the difference in performance between VF-11 and YF-21. YF-21 could easily finish off VF-11, but VF-11's pilot was under Sharon's control. Once she made a move, regardless of whether Ray Minkai held back, Sharon would not let these hypnotized pilots do anything to save themselves. In other words, as long as YF-21 launched an attack, the only fate waiting for these hypnotized pilots was death. TSK. Sharon. What the hell are you doing? Yong Dyson saw the commotion caused by the long-fanged lion Bangza. However, before he could rejoice, the appearance of the VF-11 formation made Yong Dyson furious. Yong. I love you. From the beginning to the end, this was the only response Sharon gave to Yong Dyson. Who wants the love of a monster like you? YF-19, driven by the furious Yong Dyson, rushed directly to the lake, trying to attack from the blind spot of the SDF-1's anti-aircraft fire net. What he did not know was that when YF-19 rushed close to the SDF-1 and was about to attack the bridge, a white light appeared in front of Yong Dyson without warning. But strangely, this white light was very gentle and did not make people close their eyes to avoid it. Moreover, the moment this white light appeared in Yong Dyson's eyes, the anger in Yong Dyson's heart quietly disappeared and was replaced by calmness. Yong, look. That's your dream. Sharon's figure appeared from the white light. She gently circled Yong Dyson, who was sitting in the cockpit. She gently pressed Yong Dyson's shoulder and whispered in his ear. Look, Yong, your dream is over there. Her flawless white finger pointed to the front. It was YF-21, who was being held back by VF-11 formation. Dream? Yong Dyson's eyes gradually lost their light and became as still as a pool of stagnant water. Yes, dream. That's your dream. Fly, Yong. In Sharon's light and pleasant voice, Yong Dyson seemed to feel a gust of wind that only appeared in the air. Without hesitation, Yong Dyson pushed the side stick and YF-19 accelerated into the air. As the Jam army dodged, it turned and rushed towards YF-21. Yong? Lieutenant! Wake up! Ray Minkai was shocked and subconsciously controlled YF-21 to turn into G-form. While dodging, he also looked at YF-19, who suddenly entered the battle. At this moment, Young Dyson was already under Sharon's control. Chi. State 0. The appearance of VF-11 formation and YF-19's attack were not the end of the situation. The long-toothed lion, Bangza, who was originally holding back the Jam army on the mountain peak, was also attacked. The other VF-11 formation actually took the opportunity to attack while Bangza was attacking the Jam army. If not for State 0's timely activation of the Lambda drive system, Bangza would have been dead by now. However, Bangza, who was surrounded by the second VF-11 formation, would not be able to support Ray Minkai for a while. Is he at his wit's end? Above his head was the Jam army that covered the sky. In front of him was Young Dyson and VF-11, who were controlled by Sharon. Without the support of Bangza, YF-21 and GHOSTX-9, who only had Gatling guns and laser cannons, were half a step into the door of death. Velvet, be careful. Facing Young Dyson's attack, Ray Minkai was still able to resist for a while. However, without the boundless sky, GHOSTX-9's mobility was greatly reduced. Especially in a situation where the enemy was equipped with a considerable number of missiles, GHOSTX-9's mobility was further affected. If they were not careful, Ghosts 9 would definitely be the next to be eliminated. Tut tut tut. YF-19's attack was unusually fierce, making Ray Minkai unable to support GHOSTX-9. At this moment, danger was everywhere. It's about to end. YF-21 and Ghost X9 were forced into a dead end. The steel beast, which was very similar to the long-fanged lion that Miss Q had mentioned, was suppressed on the mountain peak and beaten up violently. Miss E nodded slightly. Judging from the current situation, this battle should be coming to an end. However, reality was always full of dramatic and unknown changes. Miss E, did you hear something? Mia suddenly looked around and focused on listening for something. She seemed to have heard something. What did you hear? Isn't it Sharon's voice? Miss E frowned. She didn't hear anything similar to what Mia had described. No, it's not Sharon. It's another voice. Boom! In an instant, a golden beam of light tore through the sky without warning and swept straight through Jam's army. With the appearance of this golden beam of light, the voice that should only be heard by Mia gradually became clear. Now I seem to hear your voice. The moment this voice sounded, the mech pilots controlled by Sharon suddenly moved their fingers. Their dead eyes gradually had a glimmer of light. What is that? Among the wreckage of Jam's army scattered all over the sky, under the radiance of the slowly rising sun that scattered across the world, an extremely familiar huge battleship was slowly transforming. That's SDF-1? How is that possible? Under the broad view of the BDI system, Ray Minkai found that there were actually two SDF-1s in front of him. Moreover, with the appearance of the second SDF-1, the song that had lasted for a long time in the ultra-spacetime fortress world resounded throughout the entire Earth. Chapter 526. In the past, in the First Interstellar War, which was related to the survival of mankind, a singer appeared among the humans who were facing the crisis of extinction. She, at the most dangerous time for mankind, sang a song from a primitive civilization, awakening the culture in the hearts of part of the Jetlati fleet that participated in the extinction of mankind and won the glory of a new life for mankind in the First Interstellar War. Since then, this singer and the song she sang became a classic that could not be surpassed by future generations. Now I seem to hear your voice. The radio waves from the void carried the song and spread throughout the Earth, and also spread to the defense fleets around the Earth's orbit. No one could stop the appearance of this song. No one would have the idea of stopping the spread of this song. Because, before the appearance of this song, the humans on Earth, as well as the humans of the Earth fleet, had already been confused by Sharon's song. Now they were sluggish and had no self-awareness, until the song, which was regarded as a myth by humans and even many Jetlati people, sounded. Their consciousness, which should have already sunk in the endless darkness, was finally illuminated by a brilliance from the world of light. To me, who is waiting with closed eyes, song? The consciousness that woke up from the darkness did not have time to control the body and control the eyes to check the current situation, but the name that emerged from the depths of their hearts came out. Lin Ming Mei? Lin Ming Mei. The calls converged into a loud voice, resounding throughout the entire Earth fleet. That's the SDF-1. How can there be two? In the flagship of the Earth fleet, an old man in a general's uniform stood up in disbelief when he saw the battleship that was very similar to the SDF-1 that stopped over Lake Macross. Captain, look at the screen. When the shocked voice of the CIC sounded, the main screen of the bridge showed an unforgettable scene for all those who had participated in the First Interstellar War. Trembling fingers were raised in the air, and there was surprise, nostalgia, and even more complexity in the turbid eyes. Lin Ming Mei. Yes, the woman who appeared on the screen was demure and elegant. Her shoulder-length hair, the pendant that flickered with a faint purple light, and the sailor costume that she wore in the First Interstellar War. This familiar song, this familiar face, this familiar dress, and that familiar background, they were all telling the same truth. Lin Ming Mei, the singer who won the Milky Way with her singing and saved mankind, had returned. Most people, including the commander, were still confused about what had happened. In their memories, they were still stuck at the opening ceremony of the 30th anniversary of the victory of the First Interstellar War. However, this did not hinder their understanding of the situation before them. Lin Ming Mei. There was also the strange yet familiar SDF-1 that appeared around Macross City. Earth's fleet had already seen clearly what she and the SDF-1 were up against. That's a mech that has never been recorded in our database. In addition, although there is no record of the mech that is fighting them in our database, judging from its appearance and performance, it should be a new model that we are currently developing. Gao Maisai's supernova project? Who would have thought that the old man from Eden would be able to join in the fun? Pass down the order. The entire fleet, send out all the carrier-based aircraft. Target. They're the ones occupying Macross City, as well as Lin Ming Mei's enemies. Once the order was given, no one in the Earth's fleet had any doubts, nor did anyone hesitate. They knew that the song that was now resounding through all communication channels was the song that brought the glory of victory to mankind. And the person who sang this song was the legend who used her own singing to move the enemy in a desperate situation, Lin Ming Mei. Even in the distant moon cities, humans were not the only ones who heard this song. Hey, 33rd Marine Corps. You have to set off immediately. What the hell are you doing? In the port of the Moon City, an unpopular Jetlati fleet suddenly started the propulsion engine without permission, ignoring the surrounding ships waiting to set sail, and rushed out of the port, accelerating towards Earth without looking back. In the flagship of this fleet, the Jetlati, who was the commander of the fleet, smiled and said in a clear voice, "Put aside all the sailing missions. Now, our 33rd Marine Corps will follow the will of our predecessors and go to protect our Jetlati's supreme princess." Under the impassioned voice was the song from Earth. Is this really Lin Ming Mei? In the port tower, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Now, the Earth's circle was in an uproar because of this sudden song and the singer who was pushed to the altar by mankind. Compared to the human fleet and the Jetlati fleet, Miss E, who was standing next to Sharon, was gnashing her teeth in hatred. SDF-1. Lin Ming Mei. Again. Yes. You! Miss E couldn't help but hate. Before coming to this world, before she used Matthew and Sharon to carry out a new plan, she once carried out a plan that took years of painstaking effort to promote. But what she didn't expect was that when this plan was about to succeed, that woman, the person named Lin Ming Mei, actually relied on a battleship and single-handedly destroyed her painstaking plan without any effort. Just because of a song. Mia. Look carefully. That is the power we both fear and desire. Miss E's voice became low, and except for Mia, who was standing next to her, no one else heard it. Singing. As a former singer, Mia also understood how beautiful and pleasant the song was. But speaking of the power in the song, Mia didn't quite understand. The reason why Sharon could control others was because she used various hints and techniques to achieve it. And the Lin Mingmei that Miss E mentioned seemed to rely on her own ability to destroy Miss E's carefully planned plan. Mia was skeptical about such a thing. But that didn't stop her from focusing on the battleship that was gradually flying over Macross City. Sharon, if I were you, then I would use all my power to stop that ship. Miss E took a deep breath slowly, trying to calm her rapidly fluctuating emotions. All my power? Sharon shook her head. My power is useless now. What? Miss E was stunned for a moment. Just now, Sharon was controlling two VF-11 formations to fight against YF-19. Why was she suddenly unable to do so? Someone hacked into my system. The other party's strength is far beyond mine. Right now, it's already very difficult for me to maintain control of the courage. Song Lan's mind core. Without any hesitation, the moment Sharon said that her program had been hacked, Miss E immediately knew who the enemy they were facing was. Mia. Get ready. Let's go. Miss E quickly ordered, then went straight to Sharon's computer. And she didn't care about the electric arcs bursting out from Sharon's computer. Sharon, I admire you very much. But now we're in a very difficult situation. So, please, help us. Amidst the wildly jumping electric arcs, Miss E put her hand on a button on Sharon's computer. Miss E, what are you doing? Stop. No. Sharon. I'm just completing our deal. Miss E's face gradually turned cold, and she pulled out the chip that she had traded with Matthew from the beginning. This chip wouldn't affect Sharon's operation. Its existence was only to record the operation of Sharon's emotional system so far, as well as the evolution of the singing program. This is my farewell gift. Goodbye, Sharon. Miss E turned her left hand and inserted another chip into the slot that had just been vacated. You! Be careful, Miss E. As soon as Sharon's voice sounded, Mia suddenly exclaimed behind her. At the same time, a burst of gunshots followed closely. Da-da-da-da-da. The piercing smell of gunpowder, the blooming red color, and the scattered pink hair, it deeply stimulated Miss E's eyes. Mia! Miss E dashed forward and caught Mia, who had fallen to the ground. Quick! Let's go! Mia's face instantly became extremely pale, and the bullet that penetrated her back brought her incomparable pain. Monster! Go to hell! A sharp roar sounded outside the door. It turned out to be Mei Wang, who was holding a submachine gun in both hands, angrily pulling the trigger at the two. However, Mei Wang's shooting this time was not as lucky as before. No matter how hard she tried to suppress the recoil, the bullets could not pose a threat to Miss E and Mia. In the sparks caused by the bullets hitting the ground, Miss E's eyes were extremely cold, and even had a trace of disdain. I didn't expect Mia to be hit by such a shot. How laughable! Miss E looked at Mia in self-mockery, but when an item appeared in her hand, she raised her head and looked at Mei Wen coldly. Woman, you're lucky. If not for the urgent situation, just because you hurt Mia, I will definitely make you regret being born in this world. Da-da-da. Mei Wang, who was intimidated by Miss E's killing intent, clenched her teeth and forced herself to pull the trigger again. However, the moment the gunshot sounded, Miss E and Mia disappeared in a flash of light. Disappeared? The sudden disappearance stunned Mei Wang for a moment, and she did not know what to do for a moment. But before the flash of light completely disappeared, Miss E's voice sounded again. Woman, struggle in your own dark side. Perhaps you will have a chance to see how the masterpiece born from you will kill you. Born from me? Just as doubts arose, a gust of wind suddenly swept up in the room. That's enough. Mei Wang. Your struggle has already become insignificant. What? A light breeze blew over, and a woman appeared in front of Mei Wang. A woman with a real body. She was Sharon. Sharon? You? Mei Wang's eyes widened and she subconsciously raised the muzzle. But unexpectedly, the woman stretched out her hand and pressed down the muzzle. That's enough. Mei Wang. You don't need to do anything anymore. Your dreams, your songs, your feelings, and your love are all mine. Now I am the same as you. So, you need to stay aside. Get lost. Hearing Sharon's words, Mei Wang suddenly raised the muzzle, but was knocked away by a huge force and pressed against the wall. The submachine gun in her hand also fell to the ground. Sharon slowly stood up and looked at Mei Wang, who was still struggling, with neither sadness nor joy. That's enough. Mei Wang. In the end, I hope you can see how this country that belongs to Yong is born. Sharon, let go of me. Mei Wang's struggle was futile. I understand. Thank you. Miss E, it's all thanks to you. Now that I have this body, I understand some things. Yong, you are my king. Then, this world will become your kingdom. The moment she shouted out this declaration, Sharon's voice changed, and a solemn music immediately sounded in the sky above Macross City. At the same time, the Jam army that enveloped the sky above Macross City did not leave because of Miss E's departure, and instead, they came under Sharon's command. At this moment, Sharon Epp seemed to have really become a queen who controlled thousands of troops, and was waiting for her king to ascend the throne. Jam's movements have changed. When the familiar song "Do You Remember Love" sounded, Ray Minkai had already noticed the changes in the VF-11 and YF-19 formation that were chasing after him. The movements of the VF-11 and YF-19 formation that were originally besieging YF-21 gradually slowed down, and in the following period of time, they even ignored the existence of Ray Minkai and YF-21, as if they were strangers. This is Macross Demonis. Inspector Ray Minkai, did you receive it? Demonis? It's that SDF-1? Ray Minkai frowned slightly, and YF-21 immediately made a small turn, speeding up to converge with the SDF-1 that was gradually flying into the sky above Macross City. It's really you, Ray Minkai. As the distance between the two sides shortened, a somewhat unfamiliar yet familiar face appeared in front of Ray Minkai's eyes. You are Hinana. Demonis Mental Core? Yes. Seems like you still remember me. YF-21. It's a very good airframe. You have good taste. Long blonde hair, innocent and cute face, but with a trace of maturity. She was the mental core of Macross Demonis that Ray Minkai was familiar with. Hinana. Let's talk later. Now, please support sister. The enemy is attacking. Sister? Could it be that the singer now is not the legendary Lin Mingmei, but he Mimi? Even though there were many doubts in his heart, time did not allow Ray Minkai to continue to be entangled in this problem. Ray Minkai's vision changed, and it was the SDF, one that was already surrounded by Jam's army, and was about to activate the Macross cannon. If the SDF, one under Sharon's control, fired a shot from the Macross cannons, the city below would inevitably be reduced to ashes, just like the disaster caused by the SDF 1 year ago. There was not much time left. Ray Minkai had no choice but to rush up and try his best to stop the SDF, one from firing the Macross cannon. However, before YF-21 could rush up, thousands of meteors scattered in the dark sky that had been dispelled by the sun. The daytime meteors flashed across the 9 heavens and fell toward the same target. At the same time, their number kept increasing as time passed. This is Earth Fleet's 1st Squadron, Shark Flying Brigade. For Lin Mingmei. Requesting to join the battle. This is Earth Fleet's 3rd Squadron, Fireworks Flying Brigade. For Lin Mingmei. requesting to join the battle. This is the 33rd Marine Corps. For our culture. For Lin Mingmei. Requesting to join the battle. When the daytime meteors occupied the sky, it was time for everyone to respond to the call of the legendary. Chapter 527. The Earth Fleet was dispatched. Except for the warships that were inconvenient to land on Earth, all available carrier-based aircraft were involved in the battle on Macross. Looking at the daytime meteors in the sky, Ray Mingkai felt an unprecedented sense of shock. Lin Mingmei. Legend. She was a true legend. Even if it was just a familiar face, when the familiar voice appeared, everyone became fanatical. This was Lin Mingmei's appeal. What a powerful appeal! After the ghost, X9 controlled by Vervine circled around the sprite several times, it returned to YF-21 and sent this message to Ray Mingkai. Yes. After all, she's the Milky Way singer. It's time to end this battle. Ray Mingkai did not know how many carrier-based aircraft the Earth fleet sent to land, but from the increasing number of troops, the scale of victory in this battle must be on the side of the humans. I'm the captain of the Macross Sprite, he Nana. I'm now notifying all the unified forces participating in this battle that the giant steel beast on the mountain near Macross, the long-toothed lion, is our reinforcements. Please proceed with the IFF system authentication immediately. Hinana's actions were swift and accurate. Before the Earth Fleet's forces completely entered the battlefield, she had already sent out the announcement to prevent the long-toothed lion Bangza, who had just escaped from the siege of VF-11, from falling into a second siege. Thank you. The long-toothed lion Bangza raised its head and glanced at the Macross sprite, then turned back to continue the previous map-clearing plan. Without the hindrance, the long-toothed lion Bangza's firepower seemed to have become more violent and terrifying. In an instant, the firepower it delivered, whether it was the coverage or the damage, made the VF pilots who joined the battle look askance. Why? I don't want to stay in the brave kingdom. In the song of Lin Mingmei, the city that was hypnotized by Sharon gradually woke up. Especially the continuous explosions in the sky, the debris scattered from the sky stimulated the nerves of the citizens who had just awakened from Sharon's hypnosis. Woo woo woo. One after another, huge figures broke through the sky filled with explosions and flames, landing in various parts of the city. Or the top floor of a building, or a vast park, or the open crossroads, these sparsely populated and spacious locations were the best landing spots for these gigantic figures. Dear citizens, please head to the nearest shelter immediately. There was a battle going on in Macross City. Please take emergency shelter immediately. These huge figures were not monsters. Instead, it was a heavy firepower mecha known as the King of Monsters that had been serving in the Unified Army since the First Unification War. They had endured the ferocious attacks and forcefully landed in Macross City for no other reason than to occupy the best shooting positions and provide powerful support to their comrades who were fighting in the air. Ah! Help! A tragic scream attracted the attention of a king of monsters that had just landed and was about to deploy its weapons. But even if they noticed, the slow movement speed of the King of Monsters made the pilot who was piloting the King of Monsters feel powerless to escape from Jam's attacks. Buzz. At this moment, a beam of light pierced through the buildings and accurately hit J.M., who was chasing after his mission. Boom. In the violent explosion, a red shadow shuttled back and forth among the buildings and quickly killed all the Jam that was chasing after his mission. That is... The pilot of the King of Monsters looked at the red shadow that was almost impossible to see clearly and subconsciously glanced at the IFF system on his side. Ghost X9. A new model? So strong. After killing the Jam that rushed into the street, Ghost X9 returned to YF-21's side. The enemies below have all been dealt with. It should be the last one now. Vermilion said. Ray Minkai nodded. Ever since the Earth fleet launched the carrier-based aircraft, the battle situation could be reversed. Even if the current jam still had the absolute advantage in numbers, they were still somewhat powerless in the face of the Earth fleet with all kinds of weapons. If it weren't for the fact that the use of reaction missiles in the atmosphere was strictly prohibited, it would be the first time that the monster kings that had forcibly landed in Macross had used reaction missiles. They would have taught the Jam army how terrifying it would be in the face of the full mobilization of the Earth fleet. Even so, the missiles, artillery shells, and even the Gatling used by the VF fighter constantly swept back and forth among the Jam army. Layers of wreckage were scraped off from the Jam army like a blizzard, allowing the wreckage below to bury the desert and mountains. The reversal of the battle situation by the Earth fleet made Sharon lose her calm. Sharon, who obtained a body, seemed to have also obtained human emotions, especially in the face of the fact that the spiritual induction that she was good at was ineffective and the Jam army was constantly being wiped out. Sharon panicked. Ha, ha ha. Sharon, you failed. Mei Wang, who was pressed against the wall and couldn't move, laughed at Sharon happily. Sharon slightly turned her head and glanced at Mei Wang. Her face was expressionless, as if she had already suppressed her panicked emotions. However, Mei Wang noticed that Sharon didn't suppress her panic at all. Sharon, you can't be a human. Because you're just a program. Even love, the love for Yong, it's all from me. Even if you have a body of flesh and blood, how could? Slap. Ah! Mei Wang was caught off guard and was slapped by Sharon. Looking at the side of Mei Wang's face that was quickly swollen, Sharon looked at her right hand in a daze. Hey! How is it? This is the first time I hit someone. Sharon. Sharon ignored Mei Wang's clamor. After putting down her hand, she turned around and continued to look at the battlefield. At this moment, in the sky that was getting brighter and brighter, one side was the Jam army that covered the sky and the sun, and the other side was the Earth Unified faction that was roughly painted with the same paint, but with many unique paint styles. YF-21 led Ghost 9 to monopolize the position of the Earth Unified faction's leading aircraft. And behind YF-21 was the Macross ferry, which was surrounded by many mechs. This is the Macross Demonis. Notify the entire army, attack. Under Hinana's order, all the VF fighters that entered the battlefield, including the huge fleet of Jetlati's combat bags, immediately launched their missiles in one breath. In an instant, the sky above the Macross city was full of huge clouds formed by the tail smoke caused by the missile launch. The scale of the clouds was so terrifying that it even drowned the Jam army in it. In the next second, flames flickered in the clouds, and thunder rumbled, as if it was the precursor to the outbreak of a thunderstorm. The terrifying momentum did not make the humans who were participating in this battle retreat. Instead, the blood in their bodies began to boil amidst the terrifying sound of thunder. A red light flashed. It was YF-21 and Ghost X9 that followed him. It was Ray Minkai. The moment he saw the flames tearing the clouds, he drove YF-21 and rushed out first. Even if YF-21 was now lightly armed, standing behind him was the long-toothed lion, Bonza, who was once again ready. Kai, don't worry about your back. The long-toothed lion, Bonza, let out a long roar, but a glimmer appeared on both sides of its body. As the glimmer swam, 2 pods with 36 missiles appeared on both sides of the long-toothed lion, Bonza. The moment its heavy volume appeared, it actually pressed down the body of the long-toothed lion, Bonza's body by 3 points. Roar. The heavy pressure made the long-toothed lion, Bonza, burst out with a loud roar, but it was unable to crush it, because in the next second, the 2 missile pods that had just appeared would be immediately launched and emptied. The missiles that soared into the air arrived first, overtaking YF-21 and Ghost X9 from the side, and rushed into the clouds full of flames first. Boom! Boom! The violent explosion tore the clouds apart, and the scene hidden behind the clouds appeared in front of everyone's eyes. After this wave of all-out fire, the originally dense jam army had been reduced by nearly 50%. Looking at the dense jam army that could not see the sun, but now they could see a trace of sunlight, everyone's morale suddenly rose to the highest point. Kai. I'm going to cover you. With YF-21 as the vanguard, the moment Ghost X-9 rushed into the enemy formation, it immediately used the 5 laser cannons it was equipped with to sweep away all the jam that tried to sneak attack YF-21 while it was not paying attention. At the same time, when YF-21 acted as the assault arrowhead, the VF-11 that surrounded the Macross ferry also followed closely behind. The battle was very intense. Although the previous volley was enough to reduce nearly half of the JM Army's strength, the JAM Army that still had the advantage in numbers was still able to bring great pressure to the Earth Unified side. Especially the SDF, one that was protected by the JAM Army inside. Hinana knew that now Sharon would definitely use the Macross cannon of the SDF, one to make the final decision. However, before Sharon's idea could be realized, it was interrupted by Hinana's invasion through the Earth Unified Electronic Network. In reality, there was Mimi singing as Lin Mingmei to fight against the JAM Army. There was also a huge fleet led by YF-21 that attacked the JM Army's defense line in an attempt to launch an attack on the SDF, one controlled by Sharon. The effect of all of these factors was that Sharon's control over Yong Dyson gradually decreased, until Yong Dyson suddenly woke up from the darkness of his consciousness. Yong Dyson was first shocked, then he looked at the huge fleet that appeared in front of him without him knowing. YF-19, Lieutenant Yong Dyson. This is the Macross ferry. Now the Earth fleet is fighting with the SDF, one controlled by Sharon. If possible, please immediately return to the team and attack Sharon together with YF-21. Yong Dyson's doubts were quickly solved by Hinana's communication. Although there were still more doubts in his mind, Yong Dyson already understood the situation in front of him. Hey! What a big battle! But this is more to my liking. Therefore, YF-19 became a part of the counterattack against Sharon. Yong, why? Why did you resist me? In the electronic space, Sharon looked at YF-21 and joined forces to kill YF-19, who was protecting the SDF-1's JAM Army. Sharon did not understand. She could have relied on her ideas to become the ruler of the kingdom she built for Yong Dyson. Why did Yong Dyson resist? Do you still not understand? Sharon. Yong Dyson is free. A voice faintly sounded. Sharon turned around and saw herself standing behind her, Sharon, whose body was covered in white radiance. It's you. Didn't you leave with that person? Sharon recognized this person. It was her appearance that led to the awakening of the undead named Velvet. Left? Where can I go? My roots are here. Sharon, didn't you say that you are free? Then, why did you give Yong his freedom? I didn't. That was Yong's dream. I just helped him fulfill his dream. Sharon loudly retorted. Dream? What kind of dream is this? Sharon, no matter which world you are in, you will always repeat the same mistake. At this time, an unfamiliar voice sounded. Come out. When Sharon heard this unfamiliar voice, she immediately shouted angrily. You don't need to shout so loudly. I am right here. Sharon. That's enough. The current you can't understand the complexity of human emotions. As her long blonde hair fluttered, a girl holding a doll slowly landed in this electronic space. You are the one who controls that warship? How did you come here? This is the world that I control. The world that you control. Hinana raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. If I didn't come here, it would indeed be so. But this world is not what you think it is not controlled by you. As the voice fell, this desolate space suddenly became colorful. Seawater, white clouds, and even everything began to appear one after another. Those scenes were like the history of the birth of living creatures. Is this possible? Sharon took a few steps back and looked at everything in front of her in disbelief. This electronic space is the electronic space that Sharon was born in. In other words, this is Sharon's exclusive domain. But under such circumstances, the blonde girl who suddenly appeared in this electronic space easily turned this electronic space that belonged to Sharon into this state. I said, "Sharon, you are just a product that was born by chance. You can't understand the complexity of human emotions. You are just imitating the emotions of your emotional provider." Nana stood in the blue sky and white clouds. In the world full of vitality, she glanced coldly at Sharon, then turned to look at the Sharon beside her. And she is already standing in front of the door of her own emotions. No. Impossible. I love Yong. My love for Yong is from the heart. Enough. Sharon. Go back. Then, wait for the final moment to come. Nana shouted coldly and expelled Sharon from this electronic space. Then, she looked at Sharon again. I am the mental core of Macross Goblin, Nana. So, are you ready? Sharon ep. The white figure swayed slightly. She did not immediately respond to Nana's question. Instead, she raised her head and looked at the top of this electronic space, at the screen that displayed the situation in the real world. She looked deeply at YF-19, who was flying together with Ghost, X9 and fighting fiercely with the enemy. Gradually, ripples were released from her heart. Yes, I am ready. People from another world. Chapter 528. The long-toothed lion Bangza, who was entrenched on the mountaintop, fired all the weapons and ammunition on its body towards the sky in front of it. The continuous suppressive fire made many of the King of Monsters pilots, who used to think that they were good at suppressing fire, break out in cold sweat. Too fast. Too much. The long-toothed lion Bangza's missiles and electromagnetic cannons' firing speed far exceeded the limits of the King of Monsters. It was as if the factors that affected the efficiency of suppressive fire, such as the wear and tear of the launcher and the ammunition capacity, did not exist on the long-toothed lion Bangza. Come on. Come on. Come on. Aren't you very arrogant? Bullying with numbers? Come on. State Zero's proud voice sounded from within the long-toothed lion Bangza's body. State Zero clearly remembered the grudge he had with the VF-11 formation just now. If it were not for the fact that the VF-11 formation was controlled by Sharon, State Zero would have gone crazy on the spot and killed these flies that were flying around. Therefore, under the current all-out attack, State Zero undoubtedly channeled all the grievances he had suffered just now into the missiles and mercilessly smashed them on the heads of those jams. However, State Zero, who was having fun, did not know. There seemed to be a dormant power in its body that was awakening. It was the Ghost X9. Previously, State Zero had taken advantage of the cover provided by Ray Minkai and Velvet to transform into the long-toothed lion Bangza. In order to save time, State Zero had hidden the Ghost X9 that it was controlling inside the long-toothed lion Bangza's body. However, it did not expect that this method, which was usually not a problem, would scare State Zero. What's the situation? The sudden surge of power from within its body made the long-toothed lion Bangza jump up on the spot. In addition to being shocked, State Zero directly threw away the thick and heavy armor on the long-toothed lion Bangza's body. The moment these thick and heavy weapons smashed onto the ground, a strong heat wave suddenly erupted from the long-toothed lion Bangza's body. The moment the scorching heat wave erupted, a scorching storm was set off with the long-toothed lion Bangza as the center, destroying all the plants on the mountaintop. Boom! Boom! When the storm swept across the mountaintop, the Earth Unified Side's Mecha in this area all turned around and fled the area affected by the storm, leaving behind those jams who did not know what was good for them and rushed into the storm and were torn to pieces. Boom! Just as the jams were torn apart by the scorching storm, a red shadow suddenly tore the storm from the inside to the outside and soared into the sky. Only the Lion Type 0 was left standing in the same place. After taking off its armor and weapons, it looked particularly bare, like a leopard. What the hell? Why did the Ghost X9 come out by itself? As for the Ghost X9 that suddenly broke free from State Zero's control and rushed out of the scorching storm on its own, it was not because of an AI riot. Instead, it was because the Ghost X9 had a new owner. Zero. State Zero. A voice rang out from inside the Ghost X9. The voice belonged to Sharon Epp, who was brought out from the electronic space by Hinana. If one were to describe her in black and white, the Sharon Epp who became the new owner of the Ghost X9 was a new Sharon Epp born under the influence of the fragment, that is, under the influence of Verveen's memory. Here, it was Sharon Epp who described her. The Sharon Epp who controlled the SDF, one was born under the dual influence of Mei Weng's emotions and the abyss aura contained in the fragment. However, this Sharon Epp was far more terrifying than the original Sharon Epp, because her current behavior had already exceeded the scope of what the original Sharon Epp could do. This is Sharon Epp. Requesting to join the battle. The Ghost X9 controlled by Sharon Epp quickly came to the side of YF-21 and formed a small team with it. The Ghost X9 controlled by Verveen flew on the other side. Judging from her meaning, it seemed that she did not object to Sharon Epp joining. She just wanted to see Ray Minkai's reaction. Ray Minkai turned his gaze and glanced at the screen. There was no information on it. There was only a signal representing the Jam army that was constantly decreasing under the terrifying firepower of Earth's unification. Allow to join. What made Sharon Epp feel strange was that Ray Minkai actually agreed to her joining. He did not reject her on the spot just because she was Sharon Epp. After all, the infatuated Sharon Epp had been mercilessly rejected by Young Dyson time and time again. Although Black Sharon's decision was partly due to her own reasons, Young Dyson's merciless rejection was a stark contrast to Lei Minkai's straightforward agreement. Standing in the cyberspace of the Ghost X9, Sharon Epp looked at the screen above in silence. Do you understand now? Hinana once again appeared beside Bai Shaolang. Sharon Epp shook her head slightly. I don't know. It's just that I feel a warmth from her memory. Is this a unique emotion between humans? The her in Sharon Epp's mouth was undoubtedly Verveen. The moment Matthew inserted the chip from Miss E into Sharon's mainframe, Sharon Epp was born in Verveen's memory. However, when she was born, Sharon Epp did not have the ability to affect her body at all. She just silently stayed in the corner of the electronic space, watching Mei Weng's complicated feelings, and also watching the memory of Princess Verveen from another world. On one side, there were contradictions and emotional entanglements that were so complicated that they could not be sorted out. On the other side, when the world was facing destruction, the friendship developed from the friendship of soldiers who worked together to overcome the difficulties. In contrast, Sharon Epp, who was like a piece of white paper, couldn't help but lean toward Verveen's memory. That was the emotional fluctuation that Sharon Epp could not control. Under the influence of this fluctuation, Sharon Epp saw Ray Minkai and also woke up Verveen, who should have been dead for a long time, but had once again awakened. Under a series of influences and changes, Sharon Epp achieved many heights that Sharon Epp could not reach. Now, Sharon Epp, who longed for the beautiful relationship in Verveen's memory, only had one goal. Go. Sharon Epp. This is your destiny. Hinana's voice became illusory until it completely disappeared in the cyberspace where Sharon Epp was. Sharon Epp nodded slightly, but she hesitated for a moment. Think of it as waking up our mother. The next second, a path that Sharon specially marked that could reach SDF, one from the anxious air battlefield, appeared on the screens of YF-21 and YF-19 at the same time. Lieutenant, did you receive it? Ray Minkai looked at the path that was constantly adjusting according to the situation on the battlefield. He couldn't help but look at the two Ghost X9 that were gathered together and circled around YF-21. After getting rid of Sharon's control, Lee Dyson was still angry. Received. Let's do it. Without any nonsense, young Dyson expressed his thoughts directly with his actions. With a push of the stick, YF-19 took the lead and rushed straight to SDF-1 along the path marked by Sharon. Seeing Lee Dyson like this, Ray Minkai was not willing to be left behind. Therefore, this team composed of YF-21 and two Ghost X9 followed closely behind YF-19 and rushed into the enemy formation. Why? In SDF-1, Sharon's voice that couldn't accept reality kept ringing. In front of Mei Wang, Sharon could no longer maintain her previous arrogance and could easily see through Mei Wang's heart. Right now, Sharon was like a child whose toy had been taken away from her, unable to accept the reality. Sharon. He's here. Yong, he's here. Mei Wang, whose cheeks were red and swollen, raised her head slightly and looked out the window without sadness or joy. Mei Wang saw YF-19 in the midst of the Jam army that was no longer dark and filled with the flames of war. From Sharon's performance, Mei Wang already knew that the pilot of YF-19 was Lee Dyson. Shut up. Yong is here for me. Sharon's voice was cold. Mei Wang felt pain on her body. Another cable was controlled by Sharon and whipped on her body. Hey! You think I can give in like this? Sharon. I said you're just a man-made program. You don't understand human feelings at all. Shut up. Sharon raised her hand and slapped Mei Wang's face again. I said shut up. Mei Wang, you're just a loser in love. Yes. You like Garrett, but Garrett is the one who hurt you when you were young. You're so petty. Mei Wang. Humans have always harbored hatred for those who have harmed them. But you're reluctant to leave. Ridiculous. Mei Wang smiled coldly but didn't answer. But her eyes were always looking out the window. There, YF-19 rushed in front of SDF-1 again. Moreover, this time, the YF-19 was hovering outside the window of the observation room. Yong. Sharon stared blankly, then turned her head and looked at YF-19. She looked at Yong Dyson in YF-19's cockpit with love in her eyes. Disgusting. Seeing Mei Wang's miserable state, Yong Dyson immediately became angry. He, who was burning with anger, didn't care about what Sharon's eyes were thinking. He only knew how to control his own machine gun and fire continuously at the observation room below. Tu-tu-tu-tu-tu. As the flames erupted, the roaring bullets shattered the isolation glass of the observation deck on the spot. Even Sharon's mainframe, which was under the isolation glass, was shot to pieces. Crackle, crackle, boom! The mainframe, which had been shattered by the YF-19's bullet, exploded with a loud bang. The fragments of the mainframe flew past Sharon's face. The sharp shrapnel even scratched Sharon's face. That trace of pain, as well as that trace of warmth, made Sharon feel extremely curious, but at the same time, she was extremely angry. Chapter 529. But when Ray Minkai drove the YF-21 to the sky above the observation room, he was surprised to see Sharon with a blush on her face. That's a human? Ray Minkai looked at the woman whose eyes were filled with anger and deep love. She couldn't do anything to Yong Dyson. Yes. When that self-proclaimed mice plugged something into Sharon's computer, Sharon had a body of flesh and blood. White Sharon looked at Black Sharon, who was standing in the middle of the ruins, and sighed. Miss E. Abyss fragment? Ray Minkai's question was not directed to Sharon, but to Vervian. I don't know. Vervian's answer was straightforward. It was just that there was no answer at all. Ray Minkai sighed and decided not to get involved in this muddy water. Instead, he drove the YF-21 to the top of the SDF-1. He was ready to make the final decision and destroy the Central Intelligence Processing Center, which was the key to Sharon's control of the outside world. At that time, even if Sharon wanted to make trouble, he could deal with it calmly. However, when the YF-21 just reached the predetermined position, the black tide suddenly surged above the SDF-1. It actually abandoned the opponent and rushed to the YF-21's jam. Kai, be careful! As the two voices sounded at the same time, several laser beams swept past the two sides of YF-21, all of them hitting the black tide that was surging from top to bottom. Kai's reaction was very fast. When the laser beam passed by, the YF-21 continuously rolled to the side and avoided the black tide. Unfortunately, the YF-21's dodge was not as Kai expected. The black tide would ignore the YF-21, but it turned and chased after the YF-21. These jams. Kai pressed the button with his right hand, and the YF-21 instantly transformed into G form. At the same time, the propulsion engine exploded at full power. Relying on the strong power, the YF-21 pushed the Kuroshio back to the top of the Kuroshio. In the next second, it was a natural counterattack. Seeing that the battle was about to end, but unfortunately being interrupted, Kai was very unhappy. If YF-21's equipment hadn't been depleted, Kai wouldn't hesitate to teach this bunch of troublemakers how to behave. However, in reality, only the Gatling gun in YF-21's hands still had ammunition left. Kai, let's stall the enemy. You go stop Sharon. Two Ghost X9s appeared behind YF-21. From the looks of it, they had decided to work together to distract the JM. Please. Kai did not hesitate. After glancing at young Dyson, who was still entangled with Sharon in the observation room, the YF-21 turned around and rushed to the Central Intelligence Processing Center below with the support of two Ghost X9s. Boom, boom, boom. The anti-aircraft battery on the SDF-1 was raised to the limit in order to prevent the YF-21 from rushing to the Central Intelligence Processing Center below the head of the Macross-2 with maximum firepower. If YF-21 successfully crashed into that place, Sharon's remaining trump cards would all be destroyed. Amidst the gunfire, Kai's thoughts moved, and YF-21 turned into a human form with defensive power. No, it should be said that it could use the needle defense system to its maximum extent. When YF-21 raised his arms to block in front of him, the shimmering needle defense system on his arms blocked all the artillery shells that were fired at YF-21. No matter how fierce the gunfire intercepting YF-21 was, it still couldn't stop YF-21 from passing through the fierce firepower net and slamming into the head of the SDF-1. In the roaring sound of impact, YF-21, who was operating the needle defense system at full force, smashed through several layers of shields until it reached the room where the Central Intelligence Processing Center was located. No. You can't stop me. In the scattered dust, Sharon's figure appeared again. That faintly discernible figure was actually trying to stop Kai's YF-21. Not only that, but Kai even heard Sharon singing. Did you hijack the signal of the headset? But even if Sharon perfectly hijacked the signal of Kai's headset, it couldn't affect Kai's mind. Sorry, Sharon. I don't like your singing. The Gatling in YF-21's hand raised dust, and it had already locked onto Sharon's life. Goodbye, Sharon. 2222. In Kai's sneer, the Gatling roared wildly and launched a series of attacks that put an end to this incident. No! The ear-piercing screams tore Kai's hearing at this moment, but it couldn't save anything. The moment the Intelligence Processing Center exploded, Black Sharon, who was standing in the observation room and confronting young Dyson, tilted her body and fell to the ground. Black Sharon's fall to the ground also allowed Mei Wang, who was imprisoned by her, to be released. In a panic, Mei Wang staggered across the debris on the ground and ran to the side of the broken floor-to-ceiling window. Mei Wang, quickly come up. Although young Dyson didn't understand what was going on, Black Sharon's fall and Mei Wang's liberation, he saw it clearly. Mei Weng didn't hesitate, gritted her teeth, and jumped onto YF-21's left hand. Yong, why? I love you so much, Black Sharon, who fell to the ground and didn't have the slightest strength to stand up, looked at Yong Dyson and said weakly. Yong Dyson, on the other hand, ignored Black Sharon and focused on helping Mei Weng board the YF-19. Why? Without Sharon's control, the SDF-1's anti-gravity engine suddenly stagnated, and it could no longer maintain the SDF-1's current floating posture above Lake Macross. It could only slowly descend until it once again stood in the middle of Lake Macross. In that violent tremor, Black Sharon sadly looked at YF-19, which was getting farther and farther away from her. Yong, I just want you to hug me. That's all. When Black Sharon completely closed her eyes, White Sharon, who was controlling Ghost X9 to fight Jalem, suddenly froze. If it wasn't for Vervian, who reacted quickly and resolved Jalem, White Sharon's Ghost X9 would have been damaged. Sharon. Is she gone? White Sharon felt that her body was gradually operating more and more smoothly, as if she had experienced a new core program, and silently gave an affirmative response. Gone. The Sharon Ep, who thought that she loved Yong Dyson under Mei Weng's influence, completely disappeared from this world just a moment ago. What was left was the new Sharon Ep who had been reborn. Then, let's clean up the last bit of work. Black Sharon's departure announced that the system under her control was completely liberated. Under this influence, Jam, who had lost Miss E in Black Sharon's control, was like a pile of loose sand, and was killed by the Earth Unified Army, who was increasingly able to gather more and more power. This battle fought from night to morning, and from morning to night. When the sun rose for the second time, this battle ushered in the moment when the battle ushered in the moment of end. Of course, the reason why the battle continued for almost a day after Black Sharon was dealt with was because there were simply too many jams. In order to deal with this huge number of jams that could scatter to all parts of the Earth at any time, the Earth Unified Army had no choice but to adopt the method of extreme combat. By means of multiple batches of rotating supplies and resting, they used the greatest power to suppress the jams in the sky above Macross City until the last jam was blown to pieces by several missiles. It's finally over. Nana. The Earth Unified Army's pilots fought continuously for 2 days and 2 nights. He Mimi, who appeared as Lin Mingmei, also stood on the stage for 2 days and 2 nights. Here. When He Nana's voice fell, a floating tray delivered the drink He Mimi wanted to drink to her. Thanks. He Mimi took the drink, casually took a sip, then looked at the left arm of Macross Goblin. There, YF-21 and 2 Ghost X9 were parked. Nana. Have you finished what Dad told you to do? It's done. A stream of light flashed, and He Nana's projection appeared next to He Mimi. They didn't say anything? He Mimi bit the straw and couldn't help but think of what her father told her before they set off. Although He Mimi didn't know what happened in the past, judging from her father's attitude, it seemed like it was fate that her father had formed when he was still young. That's not it. He Nana hugged the doll in her arms and shook her head slightly. In fact, she had already told Ray Minkai and the others the ins and outs of the matter according to her father's instructions. As for how they viewed this matter, it was their business. However, He Nana was a little curious. Sister Mimi. Didn't Dad say that it was the fate that was left behind when he met the Prophet? But in the history recorded in the ultra-dimensional fortress, didn't the Prophet disappear for a long, long time? He Mimi put down the cup and pondered for a moment. That's right. But Mother May mentioned that the existence of the Prophet is not limited by time and space. As long as the conditions are met, the Prophet may appear in front of specific people. Listening to He Mimi's explanation, He Nana's brows furrowed. I don't understand. Sigh, forget it. Let's just say that when Dad was young, he met the Prophet, and then under the guidance of the Prophet, He met Ray Minkai and the others' ancestors, or went to their world. Mimi thought for a moment and thought that Nana's explanation was not wrong. After all, when she was young, Mimi had pestered her parents more than once to ask about the truth of her father's legend, which had been spread by the outside world for a long time. In the end, her father smiled faintly and dismissed her. Now, the truth of that legend seemed to have unfolded in front of her eyes. However, Sister Mimi, don't you think that after Ray Minkai returns there will be a good show? It seems to be called the Azure Arena? Nana had just finished speaking when she was interrupted by Mimi's finger that was stretched out in front of her. Looking at Mimi's finger, Nana snorted a few times. I'm a projection now. Sister Mimi, you can't hit me. You're so mischievous. Mimi rolled her eyes and waved casually. Hurry up and prepare for the meeting with the Earth's unification. I still have to carry the title of mother for a while. Chapter 530. The grand ceremony was held in Macross City, a city half destroyed by the flames of war. None of the people participating in the welcoming ceremony felt sad for the city, which had been half destroyed by the flames of war. Because no matter how destroyed the city would still be rebuilt one day. However, as the legendary singer who saved mankind from extinction in human history, after disappearing from the center of the Milky Way, when she reappeared in front of the world, the mood of the people on Earth was imaginable. The welcoming team was lined up in an old factory, and the people standing on both sides of the red carpet were not just human soldiers. Instead, there were welcoming teams composed of human soldiers, humanoid VF fighters, and giant Jetratus. The distinct formation made the welcoming ceremony more solemn. At the end of the line, close to the welcoming platform, as one of the important figures who ended the Sharon incident, young Dyson was naturally among them. This was undoubtedly a rare experience for him. Of course, even if he had all kinds of thoughts in the beginning, under the joint suppression of Mei Wang and many high-level generals, young Dyson still restrained his temper and waited for the end of the welcoming ceremony. Not far behind young Dyson, Mei Wang was also among the audience members who were representatives from all walks of life. Originally, when the company's CEO and Matthew, the planner and initiator of the Sharon incident, both died, as the emotional provider of Sharon Ep, even if Mei Wang Fong Long was not held responsible, it would be difficult for her to sit in this seat and participate in this welcoming ceremony. The reason she could sit here was undoubtedly because of the person who made Earth unification unable to clean up the ruined city after the war and was busy holding a welcoming ceremony. The Milky Way singer Lin Mingmei. When the solemn music sounded, the welcoming ceremony ushered in the long-awaited legend. At this moment, the audience stood up solemnly and turned their eyes to the other side of the red carpet. There, the highest leadership of Earth unification and military representatives were already waiting. This was the treatment that only the Milky Way singer could have. The car carrying the Milky Way singer slowly stopped in front of the red carpet. Before the car stopped, the highest leader of Earth unification strode forward, raised his hand to dismiss the attendants who wanted to come up to open the door, and reached out to open the door himself and welcomed the people inside. Welcome home, Milky Way songstress, Miss Lin Mingmei. Under everyone's gaze, he did not feel that his actions were abrupt. He even felt that he had not done enough as the supreme leader of Earth's unification. Although this welcome ceremony was of the highest standard that Earth Unified could bring out, it was far from enough for the girl who walked out of the car. Her soft long hair shone with the light of a mysterious gem. When the face that was engraved in human history and remembered by the world once again appeared in front of the world, the entire city was cheering the same name. Lin Mingmei! Lin Mingmei! Lin Mingmei! Amidst the deafening noise, Ray Minkai, who was one step behind, got out of the car with a shocked expression. Ray Mingkai understood what kind of existence the name Lin Mingmei was to the unification of Earth and even to the entire human race. However, the scene before him was beyond Ray Mingkai's expectations. This is the charm of our mother Mingmei. Beside Lei Mingkai, Hinana, who had long blonde hair, raised her head proudly. Yes. Before this welcome ceremony, Ray Mingkai learned from Hinana that Mimi's biological mother is the Milky Way songstress Lin Mingmei from the ultra-spacetime stronghold world. No wonder Mimi was able to successfully deceive everyone in Earth unified and swagger in front of the world as Lin Mingmei. However, Mimi, who was surrounded by the highest leaders of Earth, seemed to have really become a Milky Way songstress at this moment, calmly and elegantly responding to the changes around her. This shouldn't be the first time, right? Ray Mingkai's mouth moved, but no sound came out. He knew that Hinana must know what he was talking about. Of course, this should be the 8th time Sister Mimi played the role of Mother Mingmei. Hinana didn't know what method she used, but her voice sounded directly in Ray Mingkai's ear. The 8th time. Ray Mingkai's eyelids twitched sharply. No wonder Mimi's performance was so flawless. Ray Mingkai sighed. Surrounded by the highest leaders of Earth unified, Mimi, who walked on the red carpet with a smile, said a request that the highest leaders of Earth unified found difficult to accept. I hope to take away those 2x9s. As soon as these words came out, the highest leaders looked at each other, but they controlled their expressions in an instant to restore calmness, and one of them even put on the same warm smile as the people around him. Cough. Miss Lin Mingmei, why do you want to take away those 2x9s? You know, they are the assets of our Earth unified. The leader hurriedly whispered. Mimi's request made them not know whether to refuse or agree. As a key figure in the First Interstellar War, the current highest leaders of Earth unified believe that they can't fight against it. This did not mean that Lin Mingmei alone would be able to contend against the massive Earth Unification Alliance. But inside Earth Unified, and even among the many ships that have been spread out, there are many, it should be said that there are a lot of loyal fans. Not to mention others, the 2 leaders of the No. 7 Ship Regiment, the Mark couple, are an existence that gives the current Earth Unified a headache. If Mimi's request is rejected here, it is conceivable that in the following time, pressure from all over the galaxy will inevitably gather above Earth in a short period of time. The No. 1 Ship Regiment has encountered some trouble. In the midst of crisis, Mimi gave them a way out. A way to let the top leaders of Earth Unified step down. What? They suddenly exclaimed. There was surprise and there was also doubt. Miss Lin Mingmei. Before that, we hope to understand why the No. 1 Ship Regiment disappeared in the center of the galaxy after sending out such a message? What happened here? Does this have anything to do with you wanting to take away the 2x9s? Mimi nodded slightly. Yes. We encountered the enemy. Now we urgently need to replenish our combat power. Enemy? If it weren't for the many soldiers standing around and the people sitting in the audience seats, these top leaders would have exposed themselves on the spot. When the No. 1 Ship Regiment was built, Earth Unified, which had not recovered from the tragic victory of the First Interstellar War, not only used the few resources on hand, but even Blight, who belonged to Earth Unified, also used the strongest force in his hands to escort the No. 1 Ship Regiment. Under such a powerful force, if the No. 1 Ship Regiment encountered a situation where they had to return to Earth to ask for reinforcements, there must be something terrible about it. I only want the Ghost X9. As for the rest, you can do as you see fit. Mimi was very smart. She didn't say anything but left the decision to those people. After that, Mimi perfectly integrated into the role at this moment and became the Milky Way singer Lin Mingmei in the eyes of Earth Unified. The welcome party soon ended. It was just that as Lin Mingmei at this moment, Mimi still had a lot of things to deal with. And Ray Mingkai, who was just a passerby, had a more troublesome problem waiting for him. Okay. You go take care of your business. Leave the things here to us. Don't worry. Although the Miss E ran away, at least we can still do something. For example, bring them back. These were Hinana's original words. It was just that Ray Minkai suddenly felt that his previous one-sided impression of Hinana was a little naive. Could it be changed? Ray Minkai always felt that Hinana seemed to be looking forward to a good show. But these things, Ray Minkai couldn't figure out the reason, and he didn't dare to think about it. You're back, Kai. Now 2 Ghost X9 were parked in the hangar of Macross Sprite. Of course, Vervian and Rosalie, who temporarily relied on the biochip equipped by the X9, also stayed on Macross Sprite, waiting for the arrival of their fate. Ray Minkai nodded silently, but he didn't speak. After looking around, he turned and walked out of the hangar. Standing on the flight deck, he looked at the city that was mostly in ruins below. Kai, you hesitated. Looking at Ray Minkai's back as he left, White Cat State Zero jumped down from the ceiling and looked up at Vervian's translucent figure. Is it because of me? Probably. White Cat State Zero lowered its gaze and avoided the question. But Vervian already knew about Ray Minkai's concerns. Actually, Vervian looked at the flight deck and said faintly, Actually, Kai doesn't have to care about me. I'm already very satisfied to be able to wake up again. Originally, I was already dead. Even if you will disappear from this world soon? White Cat State Zero glanced at Rosalie, who was standing beside Vervian. Rosalie's appearance was because of Vervian's feelings for Ray Minkai. Therefore, the two formed a symbiotic relationship to some extent. However, the key to connecting the two was Rosalie, who had already disappeared. Although Rosalie accepted some of Rosalie's inheritance, there was no way to maintain Vervian's current situation. In other words, with the passage of time, Vervian was likely to disappear from the fragment. In the end, the fragment was only left with the power that could be recovered by White Cat State Zero. Even if this is already the best result for me. Vervian was very open-minded. However, White Cat State Zero did not agree with Vervian's thoughts. Even so, I'm afraid you have to explain it clearly. What happened at that time? White Cat State Zero clearly remembered that before the fall of the imperial capital, the remaining Sunabos royal family and ministers seemed to be planning some unknown secret. And this secret, until the fall of the imperial capital and the destruction of the world, White Cat State Zero had no way to know. Needless to say, on the eve of the fall, Ray Minkai was forced by Vervian to sit in the cockpit of the long-toothed Lion Zero. At that time, Vervian's gaze became deep, as if she seemed to see that day, the her who stood in front of the door of the truth. The girl who was called the first princess of the Sunabos Empire. In fact, the abyss was not brought by Miss Q. Under the narration of the former princess of the empire, the truth that should have been destroyed by the destruction of the world gradually lifted the veil of mystery. Not Miss Q. How is it possible? In my memory, the abyss was brought by that woman. White Cat State Zero could hardly believe its ears. If it's not Miss Q, then who is it? Suddenly, Ray Minkai's voice was heard. Looking at his appearance, it seemed that he had been paying attention to the situation here for some time. The former emperor of the Sunabos Empire, which is my grandfather. No, to be precise, the culprit who brought the abyss to our hometown was not Miss Q, but the emperor of the Sunabos Empire and the Halic Republic. In the next second, a shocking truth came out from the mouth of the empire's princess, Vervian. What? Ray Minkai and the White Cat State Zero exclaimed in unison. Especially the White Cat State Zero, it could not believe the truth that Vervian said. How is it possible? No, it's possible. This is because our home planet can no longer withstand our development. Vervian sighed and continued. In her narration, in the years of war, in order to achieve the final victory, the two countries that constantly developed the land in their hands, and even sacrificed everything to build the so-called victory weapon, coincidentally found a meteorite falling from the sky at almost the same time. Surprised, when the vanguard troops sent by both sides found each other's traces in the meteorite fall area, they actually opened the orders from the top of the power of both sides at the same time, shook hands and made peace, and developed the meteorite falling from the sky at the same time. From that moment on, history began to change. This meteorite brought decades of peace to this continent, but at some point in the future, it would bring disaster to this continent that had become somewhat lax due to the long period of peace. That meteorite hid a power that we did not know about. As long as a trace of this power was extracted, it would be enough to provide a huge amount of energy for the Empire to use for a month. So, under the temptation of a huge amount of energy, both sides rushed to develop new energy, striving to be one step ahead and control this new energy earlier than the other side. And I'm afraid that Miss Q appeared silently under this background. Vervian nodded and agreed with Ray Minkai's speculation. Yes. At that time, no one knew who Miss Q was. They only knew that she signed a joint development agreement with the two countries in the name of peaceful development. Behind this agreement, Miss Q provided the energy extraction technology developed by her as a guarantee for the effectiveness of the agreement. As for what happened after Kai in State Zero, you should know. When we were 12 years old, the abyss erupted. Overnight, the center of the continent fell. Chapter 531. Ray Minkai fell into silence after hearing Vermilion's explanation. Wait, I remember that Sangwu fell when I was 10 years old. That's a cognitive error. Or rather, it's a self-deception by humans due to their incomplete memories when the fragment is flawed. Ray Minkai's doubts were first explained by the White Cat State Zero. Why didn't you tell me this fact before? Ray Minkai looked at the White Cat State Zero with a complicated look in his eyes. Does it make sense? Before that, the destruction of our homeland was undeniable and unchangeable. Not to mention Princess Vermilion who died for her country. Although the White Cat State Zero's words were true, Ray Minkai found it hard to accept. It should be said that it was the truth. The destruction of Sangwu City and the death of Ray Minkai's grandfather did not happen when Ray Minkai was 10 years old, but when he was 12 years old. Even so, Ray Minkai could not recall the memories of the 2 years when he was 10 to 12 years old. Ray Minkai had no recollection of even the slightest bit of it. In his entire mind, it was as if this memory had never appeared. My memory? Have I lost it? The news brought by Vermilion's resurrection subverted Ray Minkai and State Zero's understanding of how their hometown was destroyed, and also made Ray Minkai more confused. The outbreak of the abyss was not entirely controlled by Miss Q. Instead, it was the root of the disaster caused by the new energy technology jointly developed by the two countries. Vermilion, State Zero, do you know what happened between the ages of 10 and 12? Vermilion and State Zero looked at each other and shook their heads in unison. I don't know. I don't know. State Zero's answer was very straightforward, and Vermilion's next sentence made Ray Minkai's lost memories of the 2 years even more confusing. When you were 12 years old, you were brought to the reserve pilot camp by a staff member of the Empire Research Institute. Someone from the Empire's Research Institute? Ray Minkai's gaze froze. This was an image that had never existed in Ray Minkai's memory. Yes. At that time, due to the eruption of the abyss, many people's records were lost. In order to facilitate the management and classification of the living areas of the personnel, most of the people were treated equally as new residents of the imperial capital. At the same time, the refugees from the various occupied areas were also brought back to the capital by the search and rescue troops dispatched by the capital. Vivian told Ray Minkai what she remembered, but at the same time, it made him even more eager to find out what had happened in the 2 lost years. However, no matter how eager Ray Minkai was, the fog in front of him showed no signs of dispersing. It still covered Ray Minkai's vision, making it impossible for him to see the truth behind the fog. White Cat State Zero looked at Rei Minkai's contemplation and sighed. What Vivian's resurrection brought was not only the truth, but also more of a fog that could not be solved at the moment. For a moment, Rei Minkai, Vivian, and White Cat State Zero did not know what to say. Although White Sharon, who stood next to them, did not speak, she had been watching the exchange between the three. It was not until Mimi and her sister returned that the deadlock was resolved. "What are you doing? All of you are like stones." As soon as Mimi returned to the Macross ferry, she immediately tied her long hair into a ponytail to make it easier for her to move around. "I just thought of some old things." Rei Minkai shook his head and took the lead to express his position, so that Vivian and White Cat State Zero could recover from their silence. After all, if Rei Minkai was depressed in the 2 lost years, Vivian and White Cat State Zero would inevitably be depressed together. Old things. Mimi's gaze wandered around the 2 projections of the man and cat, and then she waved her hand. "Don't worry about those old things. Let's talk about the good things in front of us." Mimi smiled proudly and took out an authorization document from her pocket. "Look, Earth Unification has already given us 2 Ghost X9s. Rei Minkai was stunned and looked at the document in Mimi's hand in surprise. "They really gave it to us?" After the Sharon incident, although the unified government announced a ban on the development of Sharon's black box program, in fact, they continued to develop it secretly. Not only was there a record of the second Ghost X9 participating in the Second Unification War, but there was also a record of Luca Angelo, the future successor of L.I., possessing a complete version of Sharon's black box program during the subsequent war between F Fleet and Vagila. Therefore, in such a historical context, Earth Unification actually gave away 2 Ghost X9 in one go. Yes. But unfortunately, I'm afraid YF-21 will have to be returned. Earth Unification refused to let go no matter what. After some negotiations, I only got the design blueprint of YF-21. Mimi revealed a trace of regret. According to the patrol officer's previous mission records, as long as the patrol officer was not stupid, if nothing unexpected happened, he could always bring back a lot of technology, either hand it in or keep it for his own use. No. That's enough. Rei Minkai was not a greedy person. Now, not only did he take Ghost X9 into his pocket, but he also reunited with Velvet. Therefore, Rei Minkai did not lose much. Besides, although YF-21 was very outstanding, it was still Garrett's lifelong effort. Rei Minkai did not want to take away his hard work just like that. If he did that, Rei Minkai would feel ashamed to stand in front of Garrett. However, Mimi smiled mysteriously. "Rei Minkai, are you satisfied with only the blueprint of YF-21? Mimi's mysterious smile made Rei Minkai feel that something was wrong. "You can't guess it, right?" Mimi flipped open the document and showed the contents of the next page to Rei Minkai's eyes. In view of the number 1 ship group being attacked by a mysterious enemy, Earth Unification has decided to send an advanced support team. Looking at the document that described the reasons for sending support teams and so on, Rei Minkai saw Garrett's name at the end of the document on the list of members of the support team. Garrett? He's going to leave with us? That's right. It said that Garrett applied for it himself. Mimi waved the document in her hand and stuffed it into Rei Minkai's hand. "All right. That's the end of my work. All that's left is to send you home." 3 days later, as Mimi said, in order to support the so-called number 1 ship group, when Earth Unification rebuilt the Macross City, a large number of manpower was allocated to send the resources that they thought were most needed by the number 1 ship group to Sprite. Under this premise, spaceships from all over the galaxy entered the Earth-Moon Circle in succession in these 3 days to participate in this support. Of course, although Mimi played a trick in this regard, she also took out benefits equivalent to, no, it should be said that it exceeded the total value of the resources provided by Earth unification to make up for the losses suffered by Earth unification. After a series of operations, everyone was happy. On the side of the road where the transport convoy passed by, a miniaturized jetlati was standing on the side of the road with his luggage, looking up at the Macross called Sprite. He was Garrett Gow Bowman, who was about to become a member of the Macross Sprite. "Garrett! You bastard, just you wait!" Suddenly, the roar of a motorcycle came from behind, and at the same time, there was a cry full of anger. Garrett was taken aback, but he took a step forward and walked faster and faster to the elevator at the end of the road. When he got there, Garrett would bid farewell to this world and go to the world where the number 1 ship group was located. Earth Unification's propaganda to recruit volunteers. But no matter how fast Garrett's footsteps were, the miniaturized version of him was soon caught up by the motorcycle at full speed. At the moment when the motorcycle caught up with Garrett, the tires of the motorcycle fiercely drew 2 deep brake marks on the ground, and a fist suddenly appeared in front of Garrett and slammed down. "Bastard! Garrett, are you trying to escape?" In front of Garrett, who was retreating, was the man who jumped off the motorcycle, young Dyson. The side of Garrett's face quickly swelled up, but he didn't care much. He raised his hand and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, revealing a calm smile. "Yes, I want to escape. Young, are you going to stop me? You!" Garrett's undisguised expression infuriated young Dyson on the spot. He raised his fist again, but it was caught by Garrett's left hand. "Young, don't stop me. This is my decision." Garrett's eyes showed a hint of complexity. "Get lost. What kind of decision is this? So what if you recover your memory?" Young Dyson cursed Garrett's weakness. "Then, in order not to destroy our friendship, you didn't hesitate to bear the infamy and leave Eden alone. So what if you're great? Young." Garrett clenched his right hand tightly and smashed it over. "Bah! Hey! It's great. So what, Garrett?" Young Dyson took a few steps back, raised his hand to wipe the blood from his mouth like Garrett, and chuckled. "Humph. Then, you should be able to understand what I'm doing. Young, don't stop me." Garrett picked up the luggage that had fallen to the side and took a step forward. When he walked to young Dyson's side, he raised his hand and patted young Dyson's shoulder. "Young, it was you who left back then to preserve our friendship. Then, it's my turn to leave now. After all, back then, I did something unforgivable to Mei Wang, who we swore to protect with our lives. You're just a guy who knows how to talk to yourself. Who cares about your atonement?" Young Dyson grabbed Garrett's hand and gripped it tightly. He had no intention of letting go of him. "This isn't atonement. Young, this is a deal." Garrett's gaze fell on the elevator at the end of the road. In order to preserve the original technical drawings of YF-21, Earth Unification proposed a deal for me to go to Fleet Number 1 to support them for 10 years. What? Those bastard high-ranking officials actually dared to do this? Young Dyson was furious. He took a step forward on the spot and tried to walk to the motorcycle parked beside him. "Stop, Young. If you do this, what will happen to Mei Wang in the future?" "I'm leaving. Mei Wang, I'll leave it to you." Garrett glanced at young Dyson, who wanted to argue with those high-ranking officials. After shaking his head slightly, he continued to walk to the end of the road. "Garrett," young Dyson's voice came from behind him, but Garrett raised his right hand and waved to young Dyson behind him, telling him not to follow. It wasn't until Garrett boarded the elevator to Macross Goblin that young Dyson, who watched him leave, turned around and slowly left. In the middle of the bridge, a blonde girl was sipping black tea while watching this scene with great interest. "I didn't expect that Uncle Yong's love triangle would have another ending. It really surprised me." But, amidst the sighing, the blonde girl's head was slapped hard. "This time I've caught you, Nana." Aren't you afraid of being caught by your Maywang aunt? Nana put down the black tea, hugged her head, and snorted a few times in dissatisfaction. What's there to be afraid of? Uncle Yong's family ran to the upgraded universe. Otherwise, Sister Mei Mei, why would you agree to let Garrett join Ray Minkai's side so easily? Hearing her sister's unconvinced words, Mimi rolled her eyes helplessly. That's right. Within his own Qin army, there was indeed Yong Daisun's family. It's just that some time ago, the adventurous Yong Daisun's family actually ran to the upgraded universe and completely erased their traces in this universe. Otherwise, Mimi really wouldn't dare to let Garrett, who could affect Yong Daisun's family, appear in Xingyao City rashly. Looking at her sister who was deep in thought, Nana rolled her eyes and quietly reached for the black tea on the table. But the wind suddenly blew. A paper fan that Mimi took out from nowhere was slapped on Nana's hand. Don't slack off. After sorting out those supplies we should go back. Nana pursed her lips and touched her hand that was red from the slap. Not going to chase the enemy? Not going to chase. Moreover, after we go back, we still have things to do. Are we going to welcome Teacher Lakis? Of course. After all, Teacher Lakis has been a peace envoy for many years for the peace of the universe. It was time to leave. Looking at the shadows of the heavy-duty helicopters that lifted YF-21 from the runway of Macross Ferry and flew to an Air Force base in the east of Macross City, Ray Minkai couldn't help but feel a little sad. After all, YF-21 was also a good comrade who fought side by side with Ray Minkai for a period of time that might have already surpassed the level of tacit understanding. With the help of the BDI system, Ray Minkai embodied the legendary unity of man and machine. However, Ray Minkai's sadness didn't last long before he was interrupted by the anxious cry of the white cat, State 0. Kai! Where are you? Come back to the hangar. Wei-er's in trouble. Chapter 532. What greeted Lei Minkai when he rushed into the room was a scene of laughter and laughter. Ray Minkai didn't even have time to take a breath before he stared fiercely at the white cat State 0 lying on the table. Don't look at me. That's real. White cat State 0 raised its head and glanced at Ray Minkai, then turned back to look at Vivian who was talking and laughing with Mimi. However, in the white cat State 0's eyes, there was a rare trace of sadness. You're here, Ray Minkai. Mimi didn't bother about Lei Minkai's act of barging into the room. Instead, she nodded her head slightly in greeting to him. Obviously, Mimi already knew the result of Vivian's disappearance. Mimi, you guys are... Ray Minkai didn't understand, but when he saw Vivian's figure that was more transparent than before, the fact that he had deliberately ignored quietly emerged. Sorry, Kai. It's just that State 0 was too worried about me, so he did this. Vivian's face was filled with a gentle smile. Wire. That familiar smile, and the increasingly transparent figure, undoubtedly stimulated Ray Minkai. Unable to control himself, Ray Minkai called out the name that rushed out from the bottom of his heart. Yes. Since the end of Sharon's incident, Vivian's existence would become weaker and weaker with the dissipation of the fragment's power, until she died. It's really nostalgic, Kai. How long has it been? I feel like I haven't heard you call me like this for a long time. Vivian's eyes showed a trace of nostalgia, and then showed a bright smile. But, before I leave, to be able to hear you call me like this, I'm already satisfied. No, Wire. The power of the fragment should be able to support you back to Xingyao City. Ray Minkai reached out his hand, but he caught nothing. It's useless, Kai. The fragment's power has reached its limit. White Cat State 0 shook its head, stood up and walked to Vermilion's side. It raised its head and looked at its former owner. I've already reached my limit. Vervian, my mistress. Yes. State 0, it's already my fortune to be able to see you again at the very end. A satisfied expression gradually appeared on Vermilion's face. There was no regret in her expression. However, Ray Minkai, who was unwilling to accept the fact that Vivian had come back to life and disappeared again, turned his gaze to Himimi. Unexpectedly, he saw a meaningful smile on Himimi's lip. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning flashed across Ray Minkai's mind, setting off layers upon layers of thunder. Yes. At this moment, a memory occupied Ray Minkai's mind. Ray Minkai's recent experiences were all placed in front of Ray Minkai. Is it this? Following the guidance of the memory, Ray Minkai reached out and touched the inside pocket of his clothes. As his right hand stretched out from the inside of his clothes and opened in front of Ray Minkai's eyes, the chip that Invincible East gave him appeared in front of his eyes. Seeing that Ray Minkai had discovered the truth behind the chip, Himimi smiled gently and stood up from the chair. She glanced at Ray Minkai and Vermilion and said loudly, "As long as the blood is still warm, then no one wants to see the reunion ending in tragedy, right?" After that, Himimi left the room humming a little tune. Now, the people who were puzzled were White Cat State 0 and Vermilion. "Kai, do you have a way?" White Cat State 0 remembered how the chip in Ray Minkai's hand came about. Invincible East gave White Cat State 0 the impression that he was extremely powerful. Even if White Cat State 0 used all the power it had now, it might not be able to defeat Invincible East. Even White Cat State 0 did not have the confidence to force Invincible East to reveal his true strength. Probably, Ray Minkai knew that White Cat State 0 was very afraid of Invincible East. But Ray Minkai understood that Invincible East would not attack a stranger for no reason. This point, after Ray Minkai saw Invincible East with his own eyes, he was already very sure of it. Ray Minkai took 2 steps forward, stood in front of Vermilion, and handed the chip in his hand to her. "Vermilion, give me your hand." Ray Minkai was not sure how to use the chip, but the most direct way was to directly touch the chip and see what kind of reaction it had. Vermilion originally wanted to open her mouth to refuse. She knew that she could not touch anything at all right now. But when she saw Ray Minkai's confident eyes, Vermilion involuntarily chose to believe in Ray Minkai. Thus, the almost transparent right hand was raised by Vermilion and slowly extended to the chip in Ray Minkai's hand. At this moment, whether it was Ray Minkai or White Cat State 0, they all held their breaths at the same time. Whether Vermilion could continue to exist in this world might depend on the next change. In fact, before Vermilion's right hand touched the chip, something strange had already happened. There was no shocking change. There was also no dazzling brilliance. There was only the chip that disappeared in an instant, and Vermilion who became solid again and gradually stepped out of the realm of disappearance from being transparent. "This is it over?" White Cat State 0 opened its mouth, as if it could not accept what had happened in front of its eyes. It was too plain. It was as plain as White Cat State 0 only chewing a few cherry stones, and it had already resolved the tragic ending of Ray Minkai and Vermilion's destined separation. "How do you feel?" Ray Minkai did not pay attention to White Cat State 0, and only focused on Vermilion. "I feel okay." Originally, Vermilion, who was relying on Sharon Epp to exist, didn't care about her own situation. However, in that almost dull change just now, Vermilion felt a long-lost strength. Surprised, Vermilion raised her hand to touch the table and felt the cold touch of the smooth table. I'm alive? No. It's just a projection of mass. At this moment, the door of the room opened again. However, other than Himimi, the person standing outside the door was Hinana, who was holding a doll. It turned out that the sisters did not leave, but secretly hid outside the door to eavesdrop. The person who spoke was Hinana. After all, for the technology of projection, only Hinana had the most authority among them. Projection? Vermilion looked at her body that was gradually becoming more and more tangible. It was as if she really felt that she had come back to life. Yes, projection. The Star Glory City, and even the super-dimensional fortress above it, had the power to bring people back to life. However, Miss Vermilion, you died under the invasion of the Abyss. Under the interference of the Abyss, the lives that died under the invasion of the Abyss cannot be resurrected. Is it contaminated? Ray Minkai thought of the Asmodai that he had fought with many times. That was a monster that was corrupted by the Abyss. Yes. Nana nodded, looked at Vermilion, and continued. Miss Vermilion's situation is very special. Not only are her memories and soul hidden in the fragments, but she was even awakened by Sharon under the influence of certain factors. As for the principle, I don't understand. Nana was halfway through, and Mimi continued. Okay. Only Big Sister Sure we was able to clearly explain the principles behind this. The only thing we know is that this debt has been repaid. Debt? Today, Mimi kept saying things that Ray Minkai could not understand. Yes. I am not very clear about the details. However, before I was born, my father seemed to have received a favor from your world. According to my father, the favor owed back then can finally be repaid now. Favor? Ray Minkai and Vermilion looked at each other subconsciously, and then looked at the White Cat State Zero. If one were to calculate age, Ray Minkai and Vermilion's age added together would not be a fraction of the White Cat State Zero's age, which looked cute, but actually existed since the establishment of the Cinnabos Empire. Why are you looking at me? I don't remember having such a person visit our hometown. White Cat State Zero shook its head, indicating that it did not know either. Actually, you don't have to care too much. This is something that happened a long time ago. Now you know it should be Ray Minkai. What you should pay attention to now is not this. Me? The ridicule in the eyes of Mimi and her sister suddenly made Ray Minkai feel a headache. He already understood what was going on. Okay. Everything is settled. It's time to go back. For the first time, Ray Minkai felt that the ultra-spacetime route should be extended. The ultra-spacetime route's journey was not fast, but it was not slow either. Looking at the city of stars that appeared in front of him, Ray Minkai suddenly had a feeling of wanting to run away. Are you scared? White Cat State Zero took light steps, stepped on the railing and walked to Ray Minkai's side, and looked at the city of stars that was getting closer and closer with him. If you are scared, you can go first. After all, in the administration, there should be no shortage of missions that can make inspectors go out to the field. White Cat State Zero knew that Ray Minkai was in a difficult position. Not long ago, the Empress of the Empire announced that she was the prince, but now, after a strange combination of factors, Princess Vermilion, who had died long ago, was resurrected. Although Vermilion could only rely on the technology that Nana called mass projection to exist in this world for the time being. But there would always be some competition between princesses, and on this layer of relationship, after adding the factor of a common sweetheart. Just thinking about it, White Cat State Zero felt a headache. But in addition to the headache, White Cat State Zero was very much looking forward to it. On this point, White Cat State Zero believed that the little girl with long blonde hair would inevitably be the same. Escape? Where can you escape to? State Zero. Things in the world will always catch people by surprise. White Cat State Zero's suggestion did not get Ray Minkai's approval. On the contrary, Ray Minkai had already made up his mind to face what was about to happen. Shuraba. On the port, there was a group of people waiting there, waiting for Macross Ferry to enter the port. And in front of this group of people was Euphemia in a royal robe. Hiss. Kai. Are you really not going to run? Seeing that posture, White Cat State Zero suddenly felt a little flustered. Where can I run to? Ray Minkai secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This was the first time Euphemia appeared in Xingyao City wearing a royal robe. Previously, Even when she brought the nobles of the empire to Xingyao City, Euphemia at most changed into slightly more luxurious casual clothes, and had no intention of wearing a royal robe at all. Now, this convention was broken. Mimi naturally saw this scene. "Nana, is this your doing?" Mimi caught Nana on the spot, moving left and right, rubbing Nana's little head while asking, "Don't, Sister Mimi. I was just reminding the tower out of the goodness of my heart. I did not inform Her Majesty Euphemia at all." Nana did not wait for Mimi to exert force, and repeatedly cried out in pain, telling the cause and effect in one breath. However, this statement did not get Mimi's approval, but there was nothing he could do. As the descendant of Tsonglan's core mind, Nana was born with super-strong calculation ability. As long as she wanted to, bypassing Xingyao City's surveillance and informing Euphemia was a trivial matter, and she would not be caught red-handed at all. Humph! Nana snorted proudly before focusing her attention on the two groups of people who had already gathered by the trestle under the Macross sprite. The Knight Regiment of Britannia's Knight Regiment uniform looked serious and imposing. The moment Ray Minkai appeared on the pier, the Knight Regiment of Britannia's Knight Regiment saluted Ray Minkai, who was the Prince of the Empire and the regiment commander of Britannia's Regiment of Britannia. However, the moment the next figure appeared behind Ray Minkai, the Knight Regiment of Britannia's aura suddenly changed, becoming murderous, as if they had seen a mortal enemy. "Quiet!" Veretta, who was standing behind Euphemia, shouted in a low voice, suppressing the murderous aura of the Knight Regiment of Britannia. She could not help but sigh inwardly. It was a girl that she had never seen before. "Who is that?" While Veretta was puzzled, Euphemia actually took the initiative to greet her. "Kai, thank you for your hard work." Euphemia first smiled at Ray Minkai, then looked behind Ray Minkai and nodded in a friendly manner at Ray Minkai. "I've finally met you. Her Royal Highness Vilvian from the Sunabas Empire." As soon as he said that, Ray Minkai and the White Cat were surprised. However, neither Euphemia nor Vervian gave Ray Minkai a chance to speak. The moment the two women met, they knew each other's identity. "Guyan, my name is Vivian Li Cenabas. You are the current Empress of the Britannia Empire, Euphemia Li Britannia." "Yes. Nice to meet you, Princess Vivian." "Me too, Empress Euphemia." For some reason, even with the ecological maintenance system controlling the temperature, everyone subconsciously felt a chill creeping over them. Chapter 533. Large and small pipelines were arranged neatly along the wall and distributed around the room according to their respective functions. Below these pipelines, there were parts of various sizes that were placed according to their respective categories. Garrett, who was strolling among them, carefully looked at the things around him while listening to the discussions between the technicians around him. What he cared about were the terms that kept popping out from the technician's mouth. They were both familiar and unfamiliar. Garrett understood some of the terms, but Garrett had never heard of some of the terms. "Is this the legendary ship Regiment No. 1? Unfortunately, Ray Minkai, who was facing the double Emperor Shura field, did not have the time and energy to show Garrett around the City of Stars. In the end, he could only instruct Veretta to inform Royd and Sihil to come and receive Garrett. Ray Minkai was very confident that the two, who were both technical fanatics, would have a lot of common topics. Oh. Are you the Jetlati that His Highness the Prince mentioned? Well, you do look very tall, and your skin color is also different." Just as Garrett was looking around, a burst of strange laughter sounded. As the technicians around him bowed, a man and a woman appeared in front of Garrett. The man in a white robe with a high collar and a pair of small eyes attracted most of Garrett's attention as soon as he appeared. "You are." Even in miniaturization, Garrett, who was still nearly 2 meters tall, lowered his head slightly and looked at the man in front of him. "Me? I'm Royd Asprind. This is my assistant, Sahil Kurmi. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. While Royd introduced himself, he also introduced Sahil, who had been following him. With Royd's introduction, Sahil also bowed politely to Garat. Nice to meet you, Sir Garat. Sir? Garat was slightly taken aback by the way Sahil addressed him. This made him realize that when Royd appeared just now, he mentioned a title. His Highness the Prince? Royd looked at Garat with a faint smile. Obviously, Royd, who had a lot of bad taste, had seen through Garat's confusion. Garat, do you have some doubts about the current situation? What do you mean? The mischievous look on Royd's face was so obvious that Garat could see it at a glance. Please come with me. Things can't be explained clearly in a short time. Royd turned sideways and gestured for Garat to follow. Besides, even if Sir Garat wants to find His Royal Highness the Prince, you can't do that. I'm afraid His Highness doesn't have much time to take care of you, Royd added as Garat strode forward to catch up with him. That's right. I forgot to tell Sir Garat the name of His Highness the Prince. Our prince's name is Ray Minkai. Ray Minkai. Second Lieutenant? Your Highness? At this moment, as the protagonist of this incident, Ray Minkai, was hiding in the director's office of the Space Administration. There, most of the space was still occupied by countless documents, leaving only space for a tea table and a desk. As the rustling sound stopped, Ray, who gradually got used to being surrounded by countless documents, put down his pen and looked helplessly at the person sitting on the sofa. I say, Ray Minkai, how long are you going to stay here? Although I'm happy to have someone to accompany me, you shouldn't be here now. Ray Minkai could hear the meaning of Ray's words, but he couldn't leave the Space Administration now. Because the two empresses in the family were not to be trifled with. Empress Euphemia of the Britannia Empire, and the only descendant of the Cinnabos Empire's royal family, Vermilion. Although the two were very friendly when they met, no matter who it was, they would have a chill when they saw the scene of the friendly meeting between the two. In fact, the subsequent conversation proved that this feeling was not wrong. It seemed like a friendly exchange, but it was actually a scene of swords and knives. In particular, both sides seemed to have some understanding of each other. It's a fusion. Ray Minkai, you seem to be very concerned about the relationship between Her Majesty Euphemia and the princess you brought back, right? Before Ray Minkai tried to refuse to leave Ray's office, a voice sounded outside the door. It was from the Ministry of Justice. Doctor from the Ministry of Justice? How do you have time to come here? Ray was very surprised to see the Ministry of Justice, who never left the chocolate bar in her hand. Yo. Long time no see. Our acting director. How about the suggestion I mentioned before? The Ministry of Justice glanced left and right. The pile of documents showed no signs of decreasing, and revealed a mischievous smile. Seeing this, Ray smiled helplessly. Let me go. Doctor from the Ministry of Justice. If the director knows that I used your work to slack off, I'm afraid I won't be able to leave this room anymore. Is that so? Right now, you don't seem to be able to leave this room. The Ministry of Justice carefully walked through the pile of documents, and sat across from Ray Minkai. Long time no see. Ray Minkai. Looks like you can still jump around for a while. The Ministry of Justice's teasing made Ray Minkai smile bitterly. Needless to say, Ray Minkai already knew that the war in his family had spread to the Space Administration. However, it seemed that the scale was only limited to the higher-up. Don't worry, Ray Minkai. These things won't spread to other people's ears. For us, every time an inspector returns, there will always be different, but in fact, extremely similar accident. Ray lowered his head and glanced at the unfinished documents on the table and the pen lying on the side. He immediately stood up decisively, turned around and walked to the pile of documents. He stretched out his hands and swept the pile of documents all over the floor in a few moves. Doctor, Ray Minkai, what would you like to drink? Clear water will be fine. The Ministry of Justice's sure looked down, and glanced at the documents that fell to her feet, and the corner of her mouth slightly raised. I say, Ray, aren't you afraid that the maid in your family will cause trouble for you? Maid? Ray Minkai blinked, and almost didn't react. Fortunately, he still remembered who the maid was that the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui mentioned. As soon as he heard Shi Hui of the Ministry of Justice mention the word maid, Ray's hand movements clearly paused. Cough. Doctor. Where isn't my maid? He's just a secretary assigned to me by the Space Administration. That was what Lei Minkai said, but Lei Minkai could tell that Lei Minkai was forcing himself. Cough cough. Doctor. What do you mean by the mutual integration you mentioned just now? After being interrupted by Ray Minkai, the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui gave up the idea of continuing to tease Ray. At the same time, Ray let out a big sigh of relief. Mutual integration. That's the literal meaning. When you went to carry out the mission, Her Majesty Euphemia came here once for a physical examination. Is there a problem? Ray Minkai quickly asked. No, Euphemia's body is very healthy. It's just that. The Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui spoke halfway, and looked at the white cat State Zero that had been lying on the sofa from start to end, with a very low presence. Feeling the gaze of the Ministry of Justice, the white cat State Zero raised its head slightly. Fragments? Yes. I've heard that Ray Minkai, you, and Her Majesty Euphemia share a common destiny, right? The Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui pointed at Ray Minkai and the white cat State Zero, and casually drew an invisible circle on the table. When you and the white cat State Zero collect the fragments and integrate, Her Majesty Euphemia's body will also change. Now, the reason why Her Majesty Euphemia can see some of Princess Euphemia's memories comes from this. The Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui tapped the table and continued. On the other hand, when Her Majesty Euphemia saw Princess Euphemia's memories, Princess Euphemia seemed to be able to see some of Her Majesty Euphemia's memories. According to speculation, it might be a kind of communication. Then, will they integrate into one? Ray Minkai's face suddenly became serious. According to the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui, this was the only result that Ray Minkai could think of. No. Whether Her Majesty Euphemia and Princess Euphemia will integrate into one is still unknown. In fact, before that, Princess Euphemia may have already reached a symbiotic relationship with another person. Another person? Who? The Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui shook the chocolate bar in her hand again and again, as if mocking Ray Minkai's slowness. It's Sharonep. Men are so heartless. You took her away from her home world on your own initiative, but when you look back, you forget about her existence. Lei, who had just filled the water and was about to put it in front of the two, heard the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui teasing Ray Minkai, and a sense of schadenfreude arose in his heart. In the face of the Ministry of Justice's teasing, Ray Minkai moved his lips, but in the end, he could only respond with silence like thunder. Fortunately, the Ministry of Justice's sudden teasing today was destined to fail. This was because the maid, Weir, had connected to the director's office. It's me. What's the matter? Director. Her Majesty Euphemia and Princess Euphemia jointly requested to see the director. The reason is to apply for Princess Euphemia to become an inspector. The reason wasn't important. The important thing was that the two big shots in Ray Minkai's family had finally found the Space Administration. There's going to be a good show to watch. The upcoming good show, even the Ministry of Justice's Shi Hui, who was usually addicted to research, could not help but have a trace of interest. Not good. Minkai, do you want to run? Thinking of the chill emitted by the two big shots when they were secretly fighting, even the steel behemoth, Long-Tooth Lion, could not help but have the idea of hiding. Run to where? Ray Minkai smiled bitterly. The Space Administration was the best shelter he could find. If he couldn't hide here, Ray Minkai really didn't know where to hide. No. There's really a place for you to hide. Unexpectedly, the Ministry of Justice's Shi, who was ready to watch a good show, gave an idea. Wait, Doctor, you're not going to let Ray Minkai participate in that mission, right? When he heard the words of the Ministry of Justice's Shi, Lei suddenly quivered. He already knew what the Ministry of Justice's Shi was going to say next. What's wrong with that? After all, Mei Mei and Nana have been forcibly brought home by Jean Gang's sister-in-law. There's also a vacancy in the personnel arrangements that have been properly arranged. Sure enough, the Ministry of Justice's Shi meant what Lei guessed. Yes. Originally, according to the original plan, relying on the power of Macross Sprite was enough to complete the mission. But now, even if the team was reorganized, I'm afraid it would be difficult to replenish the power of Macross Sprite. Lei pondered for a moment and pressed the communication button. Let Her Majesty Euphemia and Princess Velvet wait for a moment. I still have some things to deal with here. After that, Lei looked at Ray Minkai. How about it? If you accept this mission, you should be able to hide for a while. At that time, Your Majesty Empress and Her Royal Highness should be able to calm down. The white cat's ears moved. It was tempted. But the white cat still gave the decision to Ray Minkai. What mission is it? Indeed. Ray Minkai was tempted. Sandwiched between the Empress and the Princess, even if he was their guardian knight, Ray Minkai felt that it was too much for him. It's a very simple mission. But it will take some time, so it's just right for you to go out and hide for a while. Lei tapped lightly on the table, and a virtual projection appeared in front of Ray Minkai. Escort mission? Peace ambassador? When Ray Minkai saw the contents of the image in front of him, he could not help but feel a little surprised. Yes, peace ambassador. That's the peace ambassador of Xingyao City. Since the establishment of Xingyao City, our peace ambassador has been patrolling the universe, looking for friendly civilizations that can join us. Now, after spending several years patrolling the universe, it's finally coming to an end. Xingyao City naturally has to send out capable troops to welcome the peace ambassador. If it's just an escort mission, then I'll accept it. According to the mission description, this was indeed a relatively easy mission. Lei nodded slightly, and once again pressed a button on the table. Then, he pointed to the slowly moving wall on the left side of the room, revealing a small door hidden behind it, and said, "You can directly reach the port from that passage. I wish you a safe journey. Inspector Ray Minkai." Half an hour later, Ray Minkai successfully reached the port. Phew! That was really dangerous. Kai, how did you provoke such a terrifying woman? You're really the princess killer. White Cat State Zero looked at the slowly closing passage with lingering fear. Let's go. Don't talk nonsense. Don't tell me you want to face UFFI and Wire now? White Cat State Zero's eyelids twitched wildly, and its body trembled. Spare me. I'd rather have a fierce battle with Asmodai. At the same time, in the distant orbit of planet Mufa, which was 3,000 light-years away from Xingyao City, there was a fleet waiting there. Welcome to my fleet. Ambassador of Peace, Lady Lax Klein. I'm Inspector Igor Platone. Before we meet up with the welcoming fleet sent by Xingyao City, I'll be responsible for protecting Lakus Klein's safety. Among the group of people who bowed respectfully, a lady with an amiable temperament and elegant manners walked up to Inspector Igor Platone with light steps. Thank you for your hard work, Your Excellency Inspector. I'll leave the rest of the journey to you. Yes. Rest assured, Ambassador. My fleet will do its best to protect the Ambassador. Chapter 534. The blank paper on the table, the pen in her hand, and the dazzling questions on the projection screen in front of her. Every time she saw these things placed together, Mimi would feel a headache. This could be said to be the nemesis of her life. But she didn't dare to complain. because the person in front of her and her sister, Nana, was the most dignified and oppressive mother other than her biological mother, Lin Mingmei. She was the absolute core of the Qin Army's First Fleet, Azure Fleet, King Kong. At the same time, she was also the biological mother of her sister, Nana. In Mimi and Nana's memories, the person who accompanied them the most was probably the blonde woman in front of them. And, Mimi, have you finished the questions? Mimi's secret glance was immediately discovered by the blonde woman sitting in front of her. The blonde woman's lazy posture only slightly moved her gaze, and Mimi's body trembled. She quickly lowered her head and struggled with the questions. Other than that, she didn't dare to do anything else. Seeing Mimi obediently struggling with the questions, the blonde woman nodded her head in satisfaction. But in the next second, the blonde woman's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. She smiled slightly and looked at Nana, who was sitting beside Mimi. Nana, we haven't seen each other for a while, and you feel that your wings have hardened? This kind of little trick, you can't fool me. Under the blonde woman's gaze, Nana, who had lowered her head and was working hard on the questions, shook for a while. In the blink of an eye, she turned into fragments and disappeared in midair. Nana? Mimi exclaimed. Nana, are you coming out by yourself? Or do you want me to catch you? The blonde woman leaned slightly on the back of the chair and looked at the side of the room with interest. I'll come out by myself. Being stared at by her biological mother, Nana couldn't stand it and decisively adopted the strategy of following her heart. In the next second, a stream of light appeared from the corner of the room, and in the blink of an eye, Nana's figure gradually became clear. Where there's life, there's hope. Muttering in her heart, Nana lowered her little head and did not look at her biological mother's eyes that seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Although the golden-haired woman didn't hear Nana's muttering, she was still her daughter. She naturally knew what her daughter was thinking. Yes, honest boy. Then, as a reward, I'll increase the questions by 30%. Before you finish these questions, you'll have to stay here obediently. Oh right. The administration has already arranged for new personnel to welcome the ambassador. It can't be. Mimi and his sister both cried out in grief. The last death exemption medallion was gone just like that. Work hard, our lovely child. This is a gift that your father prepared for you. As a substitute, Ray Minkai did not know how Mimi and her sister struggled in the sea of questions. What he knew was that the target of this almost escape-style mission was actually someone he was very familiar with, Lakis Klein. Even though Lei Minkai had seen the main characters like Aslan, Kira, and Carly with his own eyes, Lei Minkai didn't have much of an impression of Lakis Klein. Under this somewhat illusory feeling, Ray Minkai boarded the flagship of the fleet that was leading the fleet to welcome Lakis Klein. However, this time, Ray Minkai did not casually walk around the ship like he did many times before when he took Macross to the mission world. Instead, he was ordered to stay in a designated area by the bridge, waiting to meet up with Lakis Klein's escort fleet. TSK. Who are those people? So arrogant? Compared to Ray Minkai, White Cat State Zero's movements were much more free. With a cute appearance, White Cat State Zero naturally became the most popular existence on the flagship when it moved around. Every time it met a female crew member, White Cat State Zero would always be teased. Over time, White Cat State Zero, who was surrounded by many female crew members shouting, AWSL, could only obediently return to the designated area to avoid those female crew members who were already in a frenzy. Didn't you become the most popular cutie on this battleship? How can you say that about those female crew members who dressed you up? Ray Minkai looked at the butterfly flower tied around White Cat State Zero's neck amusedly. I'm not talking about them, but those big guys guarding Neku. Big guys? Ray Minkai was a little confused. Yes. Well, I think they are called Tahenga. They look so arrogant. White Cat State Zero curled its lip. White Cat State Zero, who relied on its cute appearance to wander around the flagship, was rarely blocked by those big guys in front of Neku. Although White Cat State Zero understood the responsibility of those Tehenga, White Cat State Zero was still a little narrow-minded. Tehenga? Ray Minkai's impression of the Tehenga race, other than the history recorded in Xingyao City, was the Tehenga race member he met during the inspector exam, Oliphant Tehenga. This is the bridge. This is the bridge. All inspectors participating in the escort mission, please head to 02 Neku immediately. All inspectors participating in the escort mission, please head to 02 Neku immediately. While Ray Minkai and White Cat State Zero were chatting, the emergency announcement from the bridge spread throughout the entire flagship. It should be our princess. White Cat State Zero jumped directly onto Ray Minkai's shoulder and mentioned this intentionally. Ray Minkai's mouth twitched. He helplessly raised his head and patted White Cat State Zero's head. Then, he followed the instructions and followed the crowd into the designated Neku. At this time, Neku was already filled with people. Ray Minkai could see the influence of the title of Universal Peace Ambassador from the expressions on the faces of the people around him. It was a mixture of worship, admiration, excitement, and other emotions. These faces cheered when a shuttle was sent into the garage by the slowly descending platform. It wasn't until the door of the shuttle opened and a noble and elegant woman with long pink hair appeared in front of everyone that the cheers suddenly sounded like thunder. Lady Lakis! Lady Lakis! Long live! At this time, everyone was in a state of fanaticism. They used all their strength to shout the name of the pink woman who stood in front of the shuttle's hatch and waved to everyone. Lakis Klein, Universal Peace Ambassador. I have to say, it's a very suitable position for her. Ray Minkai could not help but sigh when he saw Lakis and the escort fleet commander greeting each other. The Lakis Klein in front of him was not the Lakis Klein that Ray Minkai was familiar with, nor was she the anti-fan Lakis Klein that many Mecha battle fans thought she was. Instead, she was the Lakis Klein who was truly touring the universe with peace and friendliness. Perhaps it was Lakis's own request, or perhaps it was the fleet commander's consideration of many other reasons, but the welcome party did not last long. After a few short words of thanks, Lakis Klein left Neku under the arrangement of the fleet commander. She went to the room arranged for her to rest for a while. Another princess. Among the dispersing crowd, the White Cat, State Zero, who was lying on Ray Minkai's shoulder, looked around and said with a faint smile, "What do you want to say?" Ray Minkai reached out and pinched the back of the White Cat's neck and lifted it up. "I didn't say anything. I was just expressing my feelings." White Cat State Zero shook its front paws with an innocent face. It even meowed weakly a few times, which attracted the attention of the surrounding female crew members. Ray Minkai's eyelids twitched, but he could not lash out on the spot and teach this cute little cat a lesson. "Yo. I didn't expect the champion of the Steel Polo World Championship to have a pet habit." At this time, a voice came from behind Ray Minkai. From the tone of the voice, it seemed that the person was very familiar with Ray Minkai. In this escort fleet, it seemed that no one knew that Ray Minkai was once the champion of the Steel Polo World Championship. Puzzled, Ray Minkai turned around and saw a familiar face, but he couldn't remember whose face it was at that moment. Have you forgotten me?" The person naturally saw Ray Minkai's puzzlement. He sighed helplessly. "After all, you are an unknown loser. If it were me, I would probably do the same. Then, let's just treat it as our first meeting. I am Iger Platone. Very pleased to meet you, champion." When the person introduced himself, Ray Minkai finally remembered the identity of the person in front of him. However, the name he used and the name he introduced himself with were slightly different. "Iger Platone? Oh, that's just an alias. My real name is Iger Platone." It's just a word difference. Looks like the champion still remembered me, a nobody. Consider me lucky. Sorry. I didn't remember your name for a while. After confirming the other person's identity, Ray Minkai's face also showed a smile. No matter what, the other person had experienced the Steel Polo World Championship with him. In a sense, perhaps there was a trace of relationship between the master and the disciple. No, don't worry about these details. Igor Platon waved his hand, indicating that Ray Minkai did not need to worry about the details, and looked up and down at Ray Minkai. But then again, you have been in the limelight recently, champion. Ray Minkai did not understand. You don't know? Edgar Platon chuckled and looked left and right. He stepped forward and put his arm around Ray Minkai's shoulder, whispering mysteriously, "You're right. I heard about it. Recently, there was a rumor that a very strong newcomer came to the Space Administration. With just a few missions, he won the hearts of several princesses. He even put in a lot of effort to push 2 of the princesses to the throne and become the Empress of the Empire. TSK. The smile on Igor Platon's face that only men would understand made Ray Minkai speechless for a moment. Which bastard was the one spouting nonsense? Is there such a thing? Why didn't I know about it? Ray Minkai coughed twice and asked calmly. Yes. I heard that guy was successfully recruited by one of the empresses as a prince. TSK. These days, are all the newcomers in the Space Administration so fierce? Is that so? Oh right. Igor Platon, are you also participating in the escort mission? Seeing that the situation was not good, Ray Minkai immediately changed the topic to prevent this guy from continuing to talk. Oh, yes. But my mission was completed just now. The next escort mission is up to you. Oh, you are a member of the previous fleet? You can say that. It was just a temporary escort fleet. Speaking of which, I am also quite envious of you. After all, not every inspector has the opportunity to travel between worlds. Igor Platon casually spoke halfway and suddenly raised his wrist to take a look. So it's this time. Then, I will take my leave first. Next time, if there is a chance, champion, you can come to planet Mofa to find me. That is the planet I am stationed on. After watching Igor Platon, who had a fight with him in the Steel Polo World Championship, leave, Ray Minkai immediately returned to his room, waiting for the fleet to enter the space-time channel and return to Xingyao City. Looks like this is indeed a very easy mission. Lying on the table, the bored white cat State Zero patted the little fur ball that the female crew members gave it. Otherwise, this is a full escort fleet. No one is so stupid to provoke this fleet. Ray Minkai, who was sitting in front of the computer, said casually while browsing the public information about Lakis Klein in recent years. Even so, if you complete the mission so smoothly, you will have to face the empresses at home in advance. The white cat State Zero's words made Ray Minkai's hand movements pause. It was indeed a difficult problem. It was even more difficult to solve than fighting. Woo. Suddenly, the alarm swept through the entire ship. Warning. Unidentified target detected ahead of 60,000. Fleet Level 1 Combat State. In the warning, Ray Minkai and the white cat State Zero looked at each other. Is there really anyone so stupid to come and face a full fleet head-on? The white cat State Zero raised its head in shock and looked at the warning loudspeaker. Crow's beak. Ray Minkai slapped his forehead weakly, then reached out and pinched the back of the white cat State Zero's neck and put it on his shoulder. This time, I did not bring the body over. So, I have to let you go. The white cat State Zero rolled its eyes and muttered. Isn't it just the space environment? What's the big deal? He remembered that the white cat State Zero was very resistant to the space environment where it could neither go up nor down. Chapter 535. In the flagship's bridge, Lux was sitting in the passenger seat, silently looking at the airframes that constantly passed by outside the porthole. Ambassador, don't worry. We've already made the relevant countermeasures. The commander glanced at Lux and comforted her. I know. I was able to successfully complete the Universal Peace Cruise thanks to the help of Starlight City and the Army's fleet. Lux smiled and said gratefully. However, after the commander turned around, Lakis opened her arms and muttered to herself while looking at the crystal in her hand. This was a mysterious crystal that Lux had obtained from a certain civilization when the Universal Peace Cruise was about to end. However, Lux did not know what this crystal was, but when she saw that the civilization used this mysterious crystal to constantly influence the neighboring civilizations and eventually control them, Lux immediately felt that this crystal could not remain in the hands of that civilization. Otherwise, within 100 years, that civilization would have rapidly expanded to a terrifying level, threatening Starlight City and the universe environment that countless people had spent painstaking efforts to gradually stabilize over the past 10 years. Is it the counterattack of that civilization? Even though they had exterminated many neighboring civilizations and used these civilizations to strengthen their military, when faced with a fleet sent out by the army, the seemingly enormous and invincible alliance of many civilizations was so vulnerable. Thus, that mysterious crystal fell into Lux's hands, and she was prepared to bring it back to Starlight City for more detailed analysis. However, at this critical moment, an enemy that was not afraid of the fleet sent out by the Space Administration coincidentally appeared. It was inevitable that Lux would subconsciously associate it with the civilization that had handed over the mysterious crystal. Commander, did they send out a communication request? Lux looked up at the fleet commander and asked. No, they didn't. They just suddenly appeared in front of our fleet and assumed an offensive posture. In this situation, I don't think they have any intention of communicating with us. The fleet commander smiled and was not frightened by the sudden appearance of the enemy. Is that so? Then I'll leave it to you, Commander. Only when the outcome of the battle is about to be decided can we sit down quietly and exchange our thoughts. Lux nodded and expressed her stance again. Understood. Then, Ambassador, please sit tight. The battle began. In addition to the standard airframes of the escort fleet, the unique airframes of the Space Administration's inspectors were sandwiched among them and became an extremely eye-catching existence. This was especially so for the gigantic steel lion with wings of light that flew out of the opened hatch and slowly landed on the deck of the flagship. Not to mention the enemy, even their own side's attention was mostly focused on this steel lion. Hey! Isn't that the airframe used by the inspector who has been in the limelight recently? Yes, Steel Lion. It should be him. Wait. From the appearance of that mech, it should be a mech from Soth's mechanical beast world. Since when can the body of that world run into the universe? For a moment, many topics of discussion kept popping up in the communication channel. Lei Mingkai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I say, Kai, you're famous. The white cat's tail swayed slightly, and from its eyes, Lei Mingkai could see a trace of mischievous light. Even though the white cat state 0 appeared in the form of a projection on Lei Mingkai's right-hand side. Stop talking nonsense. Start the battle. Roar. Although sound could not be transmitted in the vacuum, when the tusk lion's body shimmered, everyone knew that the battle had begun. Especially when the shimmer on the tusk lion's body disappeared, a dark green armor covered its head. Its body was covered with missiles that were ready to fire, and the two electromagnetic cannons on its back flashed with a trace of terrifying lightning. The screen in front of Lei Mingkai's eyes moved and constantly marked the target locked on by Lei Mingkai. In the bursts of urgent prompts that indicated that the target had been locked on, Lei Mingkai's finger tightened and the trigger was pulled. In a flash, the tusk lion state 0, which had already transformed into Bonza's form, became the most dazzling star on the battlefield. Whose mech is that? This firepower is comparable to half of a frigate. Seeing the terrifying firepower rising from the deck of his flagship, the fleet commander could not help but ask the CIC. Yes, it's the mech used by Inspector Ray Minkai, called Tusk Lion State Zero. It can transform into different forms according to the situation on the battlefield. What the commander is looking at now is the Bonza form with the strongest firepower. Since Ray Minkai became an inspector, the information of the mech he used was basically recorded by the Space Administration Department, and under special circumstances, missions were arranged according to this information. Now, in this sudden battle, Tusk Lion State Zero was naturally the most suitable. Come on. Come on. I didn't expect that the cold universe could become a heat sink for Bonza's State Zero. The White Cat State Zero shouted again and again. The Tusk Lion State Zero was often not valued by the White Cat State Zero. The biggest factor was overloading the equipment. Just carrying all the equipment on one's body had almost exceeded the load limit of the Tusk Lion State Zero, and its heat dissipation function was seriously affected. Now, in this cold and boundless universe, the Tusk Lion State Zero coincidentally obtained the magical buff of rapid heat dissipation. This made the White Cat State Zero excited for a moment. Without Ray Minkai's urging, the White Cat State Zero gave the best attack plan on its own and used the fastest speed to replenish the ammunition it consumed. It could not wait to use all its ammunition in one breath and have a refreshing and joyful bombardment. That almost crazy appearance made Ray Minkai's eyelids twitch wildly and also made the surrounding allies stunned. Because the firepower that the Tusk Lion State Zero had now erupted, almost forming a firepower net around the flagship that made people flinch. It seems that we are indeed well prepared this time. Don't you think so, Ambassador? The Tusk Lion's activity had already raised the morale of the entire fleet. At this moment, the three major factors were on the side of the escort fleet, and the fleet commander had no reason to doubt the possibility of failure. Yes. Lakis nodded slowly, but suddenly realized that the mysterious crystal in her hand was emitting a faint light. It was as if it was a human breathing, bright and dark at times. What? Before Lakis had time to be puzzled, a huge impact swept over her. Its speed was so fast that even the heavily protected bridge could not stop its footstep. At this moment, everyone's expression was still frozen at the moment when the Tusk Lion's activity had boosted their morale. Only Lakis, who was holding the mysterious crystal, realized that something was wrong, but it was only a little. Lakis did not even have time to make a sound before she was drowned by darkness, a darkness that was enough to swallow this space. Kai, run. Outside the flagship, the Tusk Lion had just used up all the equipment on its body, and before it could replenish it, a wave of cold swept over, causing the White Cat State Zero to subconsciously sound the alarm. At the same time, the Tusk Lion removed all the equipment on its body and stomped on the deck. The faint light also appeared when the Tusk Lion jumped up, but there was something else that reacted faster than the White Cat State Zero. Darkness. Darkness. It was an endless, lifeless darkness. When this darkness appeared from the interior of the flagship and swallowed it, it wantonly displayed its terrifying state in front of Ray Minkai, and Ray Minkai had already realized the true nature of this darkness. When he realized the true nature of the darkness, Ray Minkai could not help but curse. How could this thing appear here? State Zero. Mission failed. Break through with full force. Seeing the flagship buried without any resistance in the explosion of MDE, Ray Minkai only had the thought of escaping with all his might. No matter how hard he tried, the people, things, and even the powerful fleet that were buried in MDE's explosion would only have one result left. And that was destruction. Roar. With a flash of light, the Tusk Lion State Zero's back once again spread out its light wings, and at the same time, the Hunting Gull State, which had the highest speed, burst out with full force. At this moment, the tusked lion Style 0 had almost turned into a blue stream of light. However, under the pursuit of MDE that was devouring this space at an extremely fast speed, the tusked lion Style 0's efforts and Lei Mingkai's persistence were all in vain. The blue stream of light was caught up by the sweeping darkness, and it completely swallowed the tusked lion State 0 from the beginning to the end at a speed that made people despair. Roar! The darkness swept over, and the steel lion's roar echoed unwillingly. Success! Under the sudden explosion of MDE's power, whether it was the escort fleet or the enemies that suddenly appeared, they all fell into the endless darkness, and would never be able to rise again. This is really surprising. When the voice sounded, a glass culture chamber filled with restoration liquid appeared in the darkness. And the person who stayed inside was actually the person who was half destroyed by the berserk tusk lion in the AZ world, the person who almost lost her life, Mice. Q. At this moment, she had already recovered her original beautiful appearance. However, she was still far from being able to control this new body. Of course, this would not stop her from perceiving the outside world, especially when she knew that Mice. He was planning something big. That's natural. There's no need to be surprised. Miss Q. How's your injury? After turning off the screen at hand, Mice. He smiled slightly, as if she was not very concerned about the success of this operation. However, in fact, Mice, he did not have much hope for this operation under her appearance, as if everything was under her control, because the party in charge of this operation was not Mice. E's party, but a new friend that Mice. E made by chance. For these new friends, Mice. E was cautious. Even when the other party took the initiative to express friendship, Mice. E's caution in her heart never decreased. Since 10 years ago, these new friends only fought more and more with the Destiny Council. Mice. Q, who was surrounded by restoration liquid, slowly opened her eyes and looked at Mice. E, who had become a little hazy through the layer of glass. It's okay. The injuries on my body are nothing. It's just that the gift that the lion left me really gave me a headache for a while. Lion? During the operation just now, a lion also appeared. Maybe it's the lion that injured you so badly last time. Mice. E moved her finger, and the tusk lion that stood on the deck and caused a lot of casualties to the enemy appeared. Looking at the familiar figure, Mice. Q was neither sad nor happy, and only faintly replied. If that lion could be dealt with so easily, then what was the point of my injuries? After saying that, Mice. Q did not continue to dwell on this question. All right. How's your little partner? It's just a small gunshot wound. Mice. He heard this and gently smiled. No. If it's just a gunshot wound, it's indeed healed long ago. It's just that, on this basis, I hope Mia can obtain some abilities. For example, you transplanted the data from Sharon Epp into your little partner's body? Mice. Q was very clear about Mice. E's actions during this period of time. Yes. That's a gift. Mice. E smiled mysteriously. Is that so? Then let me wait and see. 12 hours later, in the universe where the escort fleet was swallowed by MDE, thousands of dazzling flowers of light suddenly bloomed. And as these flowers of light gradually disappeared, warships of various sizes suddenly appeared in this universe. Some of them were 1,000 meters long, while others were 10,000 meters long. In the center of the fleet there was even a super warship that was 100,000 kilometers long. It was leading the fleet into the empty universe. There are remnants of spatial reactions. It's a powerful spatial weapon. In the super warship that was 100,000 kilometers long, a blonde woman was sitting on her throne, coldly looking at the empty universe outside. The data from the spatial radar was constantly being gathered by the fleet into her mental core. Plan A is cancelled. Activate Plan B. The enemy has used MDE. I'm afraid that our escort fleet is doomed. Use all your strength to search for spatial cracks. We might still have a chance to snatch some people back. Yes. This huge fleet immediately scattered. According to the plan, their spatial radar and spatial detection equipment were pushed to the maximum power, striving to find any possible traces in the shortest time possible. Sigh. If we go back like this, I'm afraid Mei Mei and Nana will cause a ruckus. Dead silence. Dead silence. Dead silence. Endless darkness and that undetectable flow of time. After an unknown amount of time, when that light appeared in front of him, Ray Minkai subconsciously reached out to grab that light. Then awake. 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 Finally awake. Finally awake. Our compatriot. Our unfortunate compatriot. Our remaining compatriot of Eunice number 7 has finally woken up after being seriously injured for 2 months. Chapter 536. In the space-time channel, a fleet was shuttling at the fastest speed, heading toward the coordinates transmitted by the Space Administration not long ago. In the flagship of the fleet, 2 girls with cold faces were standing side by side, coldly looking at the bizarre buildings outside the porthole, and the space-time sailing routes that turned colorful from time to time. Below the platform where the 2 girls stood was the flagship captain, Teresa, and the bridge team she personally selected. However, the new bridge team that gradually entered the state of mind was not as energetic as before. Instead, the team's activity was suppressed by a chilling pressure. Teresa looked around and glanced at the subordinates, who were frightened by the cold wave hovering above the bridge and could only follow the wartime operation manual. She couldn't help but sigh. The Prince of the Britannia Empire disappeared. And he disappeared under the outbreak of the MDE bomb. In the beginning, Teresa didn't know much about the MDE bomb, but after Royd's introduction, Teresa's heart sank on the spot. That was a terrible weapon that could destroy a planet the size of Earth in an instant. Any object or life that was caught in the explosion would only end up with one result, and that was death. Thinking of this, Teresa quietly turned her head and looked at the platform behind her. There were still 2 girls with frosty faces standing there. You're scaring your subjects. Vervian, who also had pink hair, but her temperament was slightly valiant, sighed slightly. Now, I don't have the time to think about this. Euphemia slowly closed her eyes and tried to keep herself calm, but in the end she couldn't do it. I know he is very important to you. But now, you have to stay calm. Vervian's eyes changed several times, but when the words came to her mouth, they were comforting Euphemia. I know. We are one. As a community with a shared future, we are bound together for good or ill. I'm just thinking about how to find the person behind the scenes who caused Guy's disappearance. Euphemia's words made Vervian sigh secretly. That's right. When Vervian saw Euphemia, she knew that she had fallen far behind. Even though the 2 of them had some memories flowing to each other because of the fragments they possessed, they were still lagging behind. Your Majesty, we are about to leave the transdimensional waterway. As soon as the announcement of leaving the transdimensional waterway sounded, everyone's spirits were lifted. Some people even secretly heaved a sigh of relief. As the countdown to leaving the hyperspace channel ended, the new fleet built by the Britannia Empire with the flagship Avalon as the core completed its first hyperspace voyage. The moment the light of leaving the space-time channel dissipated, the Britannia Empire's newborn fleet was greeted with an unforgettable scene. In front of him was a battleship that was 100,000 kilometers long. At first glance, it looked like a planet. Around it were other battleships of various sizes, the longest being 10 kilometers long and the shortest being 1,000 meters long. On the surface of these warships, there were dim and dazzling patterns that dazzled everyone's eyes. Not to mention the various cannons of various sizes on their bodies that flickered with cold light. Super flagship? King Kong. When Euphemia saw the battleship that looked like a planet, she couldn't help but be taken aback. Before the new fleet set off, the acting director of the Space Administration, Ray, had hinted that they might meet a noble on this trip. And this noble turned out to be one of the legendary pioneers' wives, the first fleet of the Legion where the super flagship King Kong was located. Your Majesty, there is a communication request. Teresa, who was also shocked by the super flagship, suddenly realized that there was a communication request. At this moment, there was no one else who was requesting to communicate. Connect. After Euphemia tidied up her attire, she looked at Euphemia, who was standing next to her. The latter nodded slightly and took the initiative to take 2 steps back and stand behind Euphemia. The next second, a cold and arrogant face appeared on the main screen. The moment the scarlet eyes appeared, they stared at everyone in the bridge. It was a pair of eyes that people couldn't look directly at. With just a glance, it made people subconsciously feel that they couldn't resist or disobey. They couldn't help but lower their heads and show a gesture of submission. This might be the aura of an empress. I'm King Kong. I'm the mental core of the super flagship of the First Fleet. You are the new empress of the Britannia Empire that May mentioned, Euphemia? The arrogant empress lowered her gaze and stared at the new empress on the screen. Yes. I'm Euphemia Lee Britannia of the Britannia Empire. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to meet you. Under the pressure of the other side, Euphemia saluted in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. You're very good. If you're free now, come over immediately. There are some things that you must know. Obviously, the Empress on the screen didn't intend to continue with the pleasantries with Euphemia. Yes, I'll come over right now. Perhaps the other party had already found Guy's whereabouts. The gentle breeze blew the curtains, causing them to undulate slightly. It mischievously blocked the artificial sun's light back and forth, causing the light in the room to flicker. The doorbell rang. Ray Minkai, it's lunchtime. As the door opened, 2 nurses pushed the dining cart to the bed. Thank you. The person sitting on the bed wasn't someone else, but Ray Minkai, who came to this world for unknown reasons. At the end of his memory, Ray Minkai only remembered that he and the long-toothed lion were swallowed by the terrible explosion caused by the MDE bomb. As for why he was in this world, he had no idea. Oh right. Miss Lakis's public concert is today, do you want to see it? From the nurse's point of view, Lei Minkai's sudden silence after greeting her was probably due to the shocking incident 2 months ago. It was caused by the disaster that everyone named the Valentine's Day incident. CE 70, February 14th. When the Earth Alliance launched an attack on Plant, a nuclear bomb was launched. It destroyed one of the 120 colonial satellites used for agricultural production Unit 7, causing the death of nearly 250,000 people. In the colonial satellite that had become a land of death, the number of humans who survived was almost 0. Just when the rescue team was in despair, a miracle happened. In a large collapsed wreckage of Unit 7, a survivor who was seriously injured and whose vital signs had fallen to the freezing point was found. The council that received the news immediately ordered that the survivor must be rescued from the hands of the Grim Reaper, even if they had to exhaust all of Plant's medical resources. As a result, the medical team that represented the highest level of Plant was assembled in just a few hours and put into the work of treating the survivor on the spot. At the same time, the Plant Council announced the existence of the survivor and his identity to all Plant citizens. He was the young man named Ray Minkai. The 2 nurses looked at each other and placed the food in front of Ray Minkai while one of them went to turn on the TV. Ray Minkai. I think you will like Miss Lakis's singing. You know what? When I was feeling down, Miss Lakis's singing gave me the courage to cheer up. I believe you will do the same. Under the nurse's control, when the TV screen was turned on, the pleasant voice was transmitted to Ray Minkai's ears. The image on the screen was exactly the same as the one in Lei Minkai's memory, the image of the innocent and young Lakis Klein. Of course, The innocence on the surface did not represent the innocence on the inside. Thinking of this, Ray Minkai suddenly laughed at himself. He seemed to think that he was a bit of a conspiracy theory. Unexpectedly, his smile was seen by the nurses who were guarding by the side. He laughed. He laughed. I told you. Miss Lakis's singing will definitely work. Ray Minkai's silence made the medical staff helpless, but there was nothing they could do. After all, the council's order was to treat Ray Minkai with all their might. In other words, if he wanted to live, this was the bottom line. Thank you. Looking at the happy faces of the nurses, Ray Minkai just nodded. Then, Ray Minkai spoke again. Who is the person in charge here? Half an hour later, Ray Minkai suddenly felt that his question was indeed a bit reckless. Because the person sitting in front of him was not a stranger, but someone Ray Minkai was very familiar with. That was Gilbert Delandle, who was known as the Fox Speaker. If possible, Ray Minkai did not want to face this old fox too early, because, from his eyes, Ray Minkai clearly felt that he seemed to be interested in him. It was a pair of eyes that had a strong desire to learn about things that interested him. You really surprised me. Even an adjuster wouldn't be able to recover from a fatal injury to such an extent in just 2 months. Ray Minkai, I have to say, you surprised me. When Delandle spoke, Ray Minkai's nerves suddenly tensed up. The only thing he was thankful for was that Delandle was still a researcher and not the chairman of the plant council. Is that so? Maybe it's because my physical fitness is better. Ray Minkai's eyes became very gloomy. Maybe, in the dark, there is someone protecting me and pushing me out of death. Delandle stared at Ray Minkai and did not say anything. He also did not stop Ray Minkai's reaction as if he was just a spectator who was observing the interaction between Ray Minkai and himself. Is that so? In that case, Ray Minkai, you should cherish this new life of yours. Delandle smiled and then asked. Oh right. I heard that you wanted to talk to me about something? If it's possible, I will try my best to help within my ability. As expected of Dilendar, he was able to guess Ray Minkai's thoughts at their first meeting. But in fact, Ray Minkai's thoughts were not unusual in Plant as a whole. After the bloody Valentine's Day incident, the anti-Earth unification, the fight for PLNT independence, and the tragic death of Unit 7's compatriots became more and more intense. More and more young people even signed up to join the army and stepped into the battlefield full of passion. I want to join the army. Ray Minkai calmly said what Dilendar had expected. At this moment, the corner of Dilendar's mouth curled up slightly, but he immediately stopped himself. Ray Minkai, are you sure? Yes. Looking at the serious light in Ray Minkai's eyes, Delandle sighed slightly and nodded silently. Okay. I will apply to the council. Also, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm very sorry. Delandle first agreed to Ray Minkai's request, then got up and apologized to Ray Minkai before introducing himself again. I'm Gilbert Delandle. I'm also the person in charge of this medical team temporarily formed for you. Delandle's behavior was very appropriate, but Ray Minkai knew that the Fox president in front of him had already set his eyes on him. It was probably for the sake of his own strength, right? However, in a short period of time, Delandle would not become a hidden danger to Ray Minkai. Instead, he would become one of the driving forces for Ray Minkai to move forward. Thank you. The brilliance of the artificial sun gradually dimmed. It was already late at night on the colonial satellite of the Supreme Council. Father, it's already very late. Aren't you going to rest? In the sound of Harrow, the girl known as the most precious pearl of Plant gently pushed open the door and looked at the man who was still sitting on the chair and looking at the night outside the window. Oh, is it Lakis? I'm going to rest soon. But before I rest, I still have some things to consider. The man sitting on the chair was the head of the Klein family, the leader of the Klein faction of Plant and the president of the Supreme Council, Siegel Klein. Things? Is it about the awakened compatriot? The smart Lakis immediately thought of what her father was thinking. Siegel, who didn't care that his thoughts were seen through by his beloved daughter, nodded slightly. It really took a lot of effort. But what we didn't expect was that, after our little compatriot woke up, the first thing he wanted to do was to apply for the army. Having said that, Siegel couldn't help but sigh. How is that possible? Lakis was taken aback at first, but then she figured it out. Now, because of the influence of Bloody Valentine's Day, there was a trend of a full-scale war within Plant. If at this time, the disappearance of the only survivor of Unit 7 to join the army was heard again, this wave of war would become even greater. Okay. Lakis, you still have a performance tomorrow, don't you? Go back and rest first. I'm also going to rest later. Siegel didn't wait for Lakis to think carefully and directly interrupted her thoughts. She sent Lakis back to her room with the reason of tomorrow's performance. This time you win. Patrick. Chapter 537. As the artificial sun's radiance once again scattered into the colonial satellite, the military academy set up to train the talents Zaft urgently needed also began its morning exercise every day. However, there was a faint gap between the people who were exercising in the morning. Although the instructors were intentionally or unintentionally suppressing this gap, young people from all walks of life within Plant had their own circles. This was especially true for the youngsters who were important members of the council. Hey! That guy is still running. He's really working hard. Among the groups of teenagers, a silver-haired teenager raised his hand and pointed at the figure who continued to train alone on the track even after completing the daily training quota. Oh, let me see. It's that legendary survivor. Dark skin, short golden hair, and a good friend of the silver-haired youth, also saw the seemingly tireless figure. How amazing! How many laps has he run now? 35. 40. On the other side, a green-haired youth with a restrained temperament and gentle eyes clicked his tongue in wonder. Number 50 laps. Beside him, the youth with hair the color of the sea and a face that made many goddesses fall head over heels let out a sigh. I'm afraid I can't complete so many laps in such a short period of time. Unexpectedly, this sigh attracted a fierce reaction from the silver-haired youth beside him. Hey, Yitzhak! Our training goal has been completed. The silver-haired youth's good friend, Diego, hurriedly shouted when he saw him running off the field without saying a word. Shut up! Can't I run a few more laps if I want to? Diego, don't talk nonsense with me. The silver-haired youth's clamor caused Diego's eyelids to twitch wildly, but after shaking his head and sighing helplessly, he still followed. This scene caused the other two youths, standing under the tree, to laugh a few times. Really? It's so worrisome early in the morning. Yitzhak. Yes. The sigh from his friend made the blue-haired youth, Aslan Sarah, nod slightly in approval. However, most of his attention was not on Yitzhak, who had been opposing him, but on the figure that silently completed one lap after another on the track. Why did you run back to the battlefield when you were clearly staying in the rear? Perhaps he wants to avenge his family? Aslan's good friend, Nigger, thought for a while and gave the most extensive opinion within Plant. Aslan was silent for a moment. He shook his head but did not say anything. On the track, Ray Minkai, who had just completed the 51st lap, suddenly noticed a movement behind him. The one in front. Wait a minute. It was an extremely arrogant and haughty voice. Without looking back, Ray Minkai already knew who the voice behind him belonged to. As expected. However, Ray Minkai was not frightened by the arrogant voice. Instead, he was secretly exerting his strength, gradually increasing his speed from a uniform run to a fast run. And so, under the astonished gazes of the two men behind him, the distance between Ray Minkai and them gradually increased from a few meters to more than half a circle. Hey! That's a monster, right? After running 50 laps, how can he still accelerate explosively? The surprised voice from Diego did not stop Yitzhak, who was gritting his teeth and chasing after Ray Minkai. Instead, it aroused Yitzhak's unwillingness to admit defeat. Shut up, Diego. If you don't run, wait for me at the side. Looking at his friend who was almost crazy, Diego shrugged his shoulders and sighed. That's why you don't make people worry. Although he said that, Diego and Yitzhak still tried to catch up with Ray Minkai. However, the idea was beautiful after all. When the bell rang at the end of the morning exercise, Yitzhak and Diego almost collapsed on the ground, unable to move at all. Then, who the hell is that bastard? A monster? Yitzhak panted as he looked at Lei Minkai, who was wiping his sweat with a towel. Lei Minkai looked relaxed. Hey. Yitzhak. Forget it. That guy is a monster. Diego tried his best to stand up again, but he was still unable to do so. If it weren't for Aslan's timely help, this guy would definitely not be able to get up today. Monster? What a joke. That guy is a human. A human. No matter how Diego persuaded him, Yitzhak seemed to have already gotten into a fight with Ray Minkai. It seems that you can relax a little, Aslan. Neger, who came behind the crowd, said with a faint smile. These words made Aslan shake his head helplessly, but he was secretly relieved. After all, Aslan, who had always maintained the #1 results, was always targeted by Yitzhak. This also gave Aslan a headache. Now, the appearance of Ray Minkai seemed to have attracted Yitzhak's attention. Okay. Get up. Next is the long-awaited MS manipulation course. Diego, who had recovered some strength, reached out and pulled Yitzhak up, looked around and chuckled softly. Yes, that was a course that all the students in the military academy had been looking forward to for a long time. That was the MS manipulation course that Zaft was able to maintain a strong suppression on the Earth in a short period of time. At the same time, it also meant that as long as they completed this course, these hot-blooded teenagers would be able to step into the battlefield to expel the enemy and avenge their compatriots. In the midst of enthusiastic anticipation, Aslan, Yitzhak, and others came to the area where the simulation cockpit was located inside the military academy. However, everyone who came to this area saw another scene that made Yitzhak very unhappy. It's him. It's him again. It's him again. Ray Minkai, who had just completed a long-distance run that was also difficult to complete in the eyes of the adjuster, was now standing in front of the instructor, discussing something with the instructor. Although they couldn't hear the discussion between the two, it was not difficult to see from the simulation cockpit behind them that the topic of the two should be about the MS driving course. That bastard! At this moment, Aslan, Neger, and even Diego's eyes quietly moved to Yitzhak's face. Then, the three of them looked at each other and shook their heads in unison. Ah! Yitzhak is really going against Ray Minkai. Instructor, I apply for the MS driving simulation course. Under the gaze of the three people, Yitzhak rushed up angrily and issued an application loudly. And, Yitzhak? The instructor who was discussing with Lei Minkai glanced at Yitzhak and suddenly found that Yitzhak's eyes had been fixed on Ray Minkai. Thus, the instructor naturally agreed to Yitzhak's application. Yes, the simulation program has been adjusted. It's up. Yitzhak, let me see your strength. As the instructor pointed to the simulation cockpit behind him, Ray Minkai also took a step back and made way for him to enter the simulation cockpit. But when Yitzhak entered the simulation cockpit, the provocative look he threw at Ray Minkai made Ray Minkai stunned. It seems that the previous leader offended Yitzhak. Ray Minkai secretly said. But he didn't care much. Because this was also what Ray Minkai was looking forward to. Now, it was already the timeline after the bloody Valentine's Day and April Fool's Day incident happened. In the timeline that Ray Minkai was familiar with, there was not much time left before Aslan's batch of young soldiers appeared. Especially since Lei Mingkai was a transfer student, if he wanted to get close to or even stand by someone's side in the following period of time, he had to fight for all the power he could to make a name for himself. Therefore, a stepping stone was necessary. But, for Yitzhak, it might be a very tragic experience. Hello. I'm Aslan Sarah. When the door of the simulation cockpit closed, a familiar voice sounded behind Rei Mingkai. It was Aslan. But it was different from the Aslan that Rei Mingkai knew. Whether it was appearance, temperament, or even voice, it was far from the Aslan that Rei Mingkai knew. It was calm and mature. That was inevitable. After all, the current Aslan was only an ignorant teenager who joined the army under the influence of his mother's death and father's influence because of the tragedy of Unit 7. Hello. I'm Rei Mingkai. Rei Mingkai nodded in a friendly manner. The greeting between the two also became the key to breaking the ice between the crowd. Neger and Diego came forward to greet Rei Mingkai. But in this friendly atmosphere, Yitzhak, who had entered the simulation cockpit before, appeared. And his face was quite ugly. Yo, Yitzhak, how does it feel? How does it feel to drive MS? Diego's words made Yitzhak frown. But he did not immediately get angry with his friend, but turned to look at the instructor. Instructor, is this the real MS? Yitzhak's question first made the instructor stunned for a moment, then the instructor suddenly clapped his hands in realization. Right. I forgot. Sorry. Before you came just now, Rei Mingkai had already started MS simulation driving. It was just that Rei Mingkai's idea after experiencing the simulation driving was very interesting, so I modified the simulation program according to what he said. Sorry. The original simulation program was not like this. The instructor smiled apologetically and prepared to restore the modified program. But before the instructor could start moving, Yitzhak suddenly turned around and stood in front of the cabin door of the simulation cockpit. No. That's enough. Instructor, I want to do another simulation. This, according to the requirements of the training manual, as the first day of the MS simulation driving course, every student was required to do the first MS simulation driving. Yitzhak's request would probably cause the driving time of the students behind him to be compressed. No. Instructor, I've already done a simulation driving. Rei Mingkai took the lead in expressing his stance. And Aslan, Neger, and Diego, perhaps because they wanted to see what the simulation program adjusted by Rei Mingkai looked like, also nodded and gave up the time, making Yitzhak a guinea pig. Everyone's unanimous statement made the instructor scratch his head, but he let them be. In the process of the artificial sun's brilliance, to the most dazzling, and then to the dim, Yitzhak encountered failure again and again, but gritted his teeth and started the simulation program again and again. It's been a day. Why is Yitzhak still looking for abuse? At noon, the instructor forced Yitzhak to stay in the cafeteria on the grounds that he had to rest to make time for Aslan and the others to have their first simulation driving experience. In fact, Aslan, Neger, and Diego's simulation experience was not good, because they all unanimously requested to use the modified simulation program for the first simulation driving. The result could be imagined. Even Aslan, who had the best results, only lasted for 30 seconds. Almost everyone else was defeated within 10 seconds. Speaking of which, it's just a simple startup program. How can it be so difficult? Neger couldn't help but feel discouraged when he thought of his first driving experience. Whether it was for him or others, the imagined MS startup program should be very simple. How could it be so difficult? Everyone looked at each other, shook their heads, and sighed. To be honest, because of Rei Mingkai and the instructor's fiddling, it really hit the self-confidence of these proud sons of heaven. It was no wonder that Yitzhak, who was usually the biggest in the world, would be so crazy about this simulation driving. Time gradually moved forward. The news that Ray Minkai had entered the military academy was spread by people with intentions. It also echoed the thoughts of some people and set off a wave of military craze within Plant. As the only survivor of Unus 7, the news that he had joined the military academy and became Zaph's reserve force had indeed become the key to boosting morale at this critical moment. In addition, Ray Minkai's activity in the military academy was concealed by people with intentions. What the people of Plant knew about Ray Minkai was only the news of him entering the military academy. Our compatriots have been very active recently, haven't they? In the office of the chairman of the National Defense Committee of Plant, Patrick Sala looked at the photos of Ray Minkai's active performance in the military academy. Yes. He's a very good seed, Chairman. Sitting on the sofa in front of Patrick was the ace pilot who performed outstandingly in the World Tree attack and was later awarded the Nebula Medal, Kreutzer. As the new confidant of the chairman of the National Defense Committee, he naturally would not miss any changes in Zaph's future. Seed. Patrick Sala looked at Ray Minkai in the photo and pondered. Ever since the moment Ray Minkai was found in the wreckage of Unus 7, Patrick Sala had sent more people to investigate Ray Minkai's identity. Although the results of the investigation were full of mistakes, it also confirmed that after the death of Unus 7, Plant's relevant files were missing. That's it for today, Kreutzer. Go back first. Understood, Chairman. Then I'll take my leave first. Patrick Sala looked at his new confidant's back that was isolated by the automatic door and pressed a communication button. It's me. Tell Ray Minkai to come see me. Yes. Don't let anyone know. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.